bit different into last season. All right, we're back. All right, so we've taken like almost like a year break. A lot of stuff has happened. Uh, I've been pretty much sick for an entire year, for the most part. I'm even still a little bit sick. I'm still recovering a little bit. It's been a thing. And so obviously you work too hard. Dr. Tia San Johnson called it John Henryism, where black men in general, but more specifically black men, you just overwork yourself to the point of having health issues. So
Burnout is a real thing, man.
sorry,
Burnout is definitely a real thing,
it's
man.
a real thing. And just so you guys, as you guys can hear, you're like, who is that voice? Who is this stranger? For those that are listening or watching, there's someone that's joined Jordan and I in terms of the content creation. I'll first let Jordan. Oh, I don't know if Jordan, you've been on like a spiritual journey as well. I don't know if you want to touch on that, and then we'll introduce our newest and very important member.
Yeah, first and foremost, I would just like to say it's good to be back. It feels very good to be back.
We've had a lot of
Joining
time.
Eb,
Hmm.
yeah, especially given the downtime
Hmm.
we had in shooting this upcoming video. So it's good to join Eb and our newest guest, Debo. I don't know if Debo can hear us.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
there he is. And no, so it's just been a very spiritual journey, financial journey, and personal journey. I've traveled a lot, and
You
I've
did a
just been
lot, huh?
very, yeah, surprisingly, I've traveled a lot. And I've been also on I would like to say a financial journey. So I'm just trying to financially improve myself. But then also, I'm also trying to personally improve myself in a sense that where, I get to improve my emotional intelligence because you can never be perfect, especially when it comes to emotional intelligence. So I'm happy to do this interview or this episode on Jujutsu Kaisen on the relationship between not between but on the male relationship of Todo and Yuji on Jujutsu Kaisen. So without further ado, Eb,
Well,
Debo,
yeah,
let's go.
I don't know if Debo wants to say anything about his process, getting to Blackner talks and everything. Is there anything you want to touch on? Are we just gonna get this one started, bro?
I'll give myself a quick intro. I guess I'm the elder statesman of the group right now, the elder
Oh
statesman of the
God,
group right now.
Papa.
There it is.
Don't.
Um, how did we link up? I guess it would have been through Matthew.
Yes.
Um, I did some work with Matthew doing some I guess you can call it content creation. We're working on a series, and it got into the talks of anime. And when anybody tells me they like something that I like to I don't necessarily think of it as gatekeeping, but I'll ask them questions just to see where they're at.
I like that.
So
Mm,
I know how I can engage them further. So like
same.
if you don't know as much as I know, I'm not going to have
Go
like
into depth.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So again, talking to Matthew, I asked him a few questions, and it was automatically clear that he was leaps and bounds well ahead of me in terms of
Oh,
my
I like
anime
that.
journey. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So he talked about the WhatsApp group, and the WhatsApp group, I eventually met Eb on the WhatsApp group, and through Eb I met Jordan. But it's funny, the specific topic that we're getting on, it kind of reminds me of how me and Eb kind of clicked. How
Yes.
Toji and not
Yuji.
Toji, Todo
Todo. Todo. Mhm.
and Yuji. I'm terrible when it comes to anime names. I'm gonna
Oh,
mess
we
that up.
got you. We got you. We got
I'm
you.
terrible when it comes to. I know that guy and that guy. That's how I do it for the most part.
Don't
You
kill
guys
me.
gonna definitely have to help me out with names. But the way they linked up, it was just a simple question. And I know this is how dudes become friends. It's
Yes.
just a simple theme that they both like. They can get into conversations on that, and just off that, they can be best friends. And
Yes.
something similar happened to me and Eb. We were talking about basically the kind of like the red pill space, and
Yep.
I don't know who messaged who, but one of us messaged each other on the low outside of the WhatsApp group, and we started
Yep.
talking about different content creators that we listen to, and it seemed like we were basically like had the same algorithm. Like our
Mindset.
algorithms like be identical. So at one point it was like he brought up Dr. Tia Johnson, and that's a guy that I've been looking at, watching his videos for a while. And at that point, it was kind of like the stepbrother situation. Was like, did we just become best friends?
Yeah.
So just like that one little theme that made Todo and Yuji become friends. In their case, it was the love of tall, leggy women.
Tall woman with big butts, bro. Say it with your
Tall
chest.
women with big
Big
butts.
booty, tall women. Jennifer Lawrence, apparently. I don't know if she has
Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence. When I heard the Jennifer, I thought it would have been Lopez, but Jennifer Lawrence, I guess for the newer generation. But yeah,
Yeah.
the way that me and Ed got into our friendship reminded me of the way Yuji and Todo got into their friendship, and lo and behold, that's what we're gonna be talking about today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this guy's a good this guy has experience with content creation. This guy knew how to segue right into it. So exactly. Yeah, that's it. So like in the anime group chat, I just put TLA, right? So for me personally, as much as I'm a big advocate for men and I do a lot of reading, I listen to a lot of academic seminar on masculinities, black masculinities, and things like that. Men's issue, I do a lot of advocacy with community work and whatnot. I operate and move in life, and I know Jordan knows what I mean when I say this because he sees how he's always with me when I'm like navigating spaces. By default, I'm going to assume that people don't care about what I care about. And I'm not saying that to say like, oh, woe is men and no one cares about us. No, I'm not trying to go down that route. Most people don't care about most things. Let's be honest. Most people don't care, right? Most people aren't thinking about like, the children who have to like sew clothes in Sri Lanka. Most people don't care about Congolese children in Congo mining for mercury. Most people don't care about that. Most people don't care about most things. We only have so much capacity for so many things. That's why there's different people who are there for different things. So I knew that most people in the black anime group chat that we have, most people wouldn't care or even know about like men's stuff. Even there's another guy that like I end up connecting with, and even him, like I didn't think he was serious about it until he was like, no, like I actually do community work around this stuff. And I'm like, oh, you're about that life, and you're a therapist. Okay, you're a therapist too. Okay, right? So like I put something in the group chat saying something about TLA, the lead attorney. I don't really watch his stuff, but I've kind of watched some of his content, and only people who like watch men's stuff would know who that is. And then Badebo said the lead attorney, and I'm like, oh, Badebo knows the attorney. I was like, okay, this guy knows something. And then they started inquiring a little bit more in the group chat, and then that's why directly you message you directly, and then that's when you asked me, oh, do you know Dr. Tia Johnson? And then I pulled out the book, and then yeah, ever since that we've just been homies since. Like he's my guy. Ever since that day, we talk like I think we talk about almost like every day. No,
That sounds about right.
yeah, like we talk pretty much like every day. So
That sounds about right.
And that's how those relationships happen. It's always on something that's a little bit quote unquote shallow, right? And shallow or a little bit empty, and then it goes into something deeper, right? Even like one of my boys, remember him? He knows who he is. He's listening right now. Best man, my wedding. That's my guy. And I remember him asking me, like if I watch anime, if I ever heard of Guilty Gear. Lo and behold, still playing Guilty Gear. Still about that life. Got an arcade in my PS4, my PS5 are right here, and like I'm still watching anime. It starts on those levels and it always goes deeper. And those things need to be acknowledged. Yeah, I would say those things tend to get acknowledged, and it goes deeper. So like when I think about like Yuji and Todo, they first, as you said, connected on like tall, big booty women, and then it went into what they both aspire towards in terms of their values, right? I remember Todo even asking Yuji, I can't remember what first Yuji dismissed Todo on like the weaknesses of his fighting style, the divergent fist. And then I remember Todo asking him, because first Yuji dismissed him, because Yuji's like, yo, this guy's kind of weird. He's saying we're best friends. I just met him 5 minutes ago and he just headbutted me. Like, he's on my mans. And then, Todo ended up asking him, are you okay being this weak? And then I remember like that had an impact on Yuji. He was like, nah, I'm not okay being this weak. I need to be better. And then that's really when their relationship literally catapulted within the span of like 10 minutes. I don't know if anyone wants to kind of say anything about that.
Yeah. So what you said is absolutely correct. And one of the things I really love about male relationship is that it's extremely dynamic and simple in the sense that if you were to analyze Yuji and Toto's relationship, it first got acknowledged through their fighting capabilities. So they first
Mm.
had to acknowledge themselves in a sense that, okay, we are on par with each other. Therefore, we can then continue on with our relationship. Because you can imagine, right? If Yuji was weak, he was back to just being a regular, high school student and never ate. What's the evil entity name?
Sukuda.
Sakura, right?
Mm-hmm. She says
And
Sakura. This guy says Sakura. Yo, the Naruto fans are gonna come after you,
I
bro.
was
They're
gonna
like,
say
yo, how
Suku.
dare
I
you
was gonna
talk
say
about that useless
Sukuna.
character?
I was gonna say Sukuna, but
Oh, you okay? You got
clearly,
it. Yeah.
okay, okay. So if Todo was overwhelmingly stronger than Yuji, that friendship would not have been acknowledged by Todo.
Mm,
You know what
there's
I mean?
potential there.
Todo
Yeah,
would have just said, "This guy's weak. There's nothing else more. I don't want any relationship with this guy."
it's true.
But once Todo recognized that their fighting capabilities were on par, then the next step was, "Who are you? What do you like? I like this woman. Oh, we like the same woman. You are now my best friend." And the relationship I could derive from that is kind of how me and Eb started. Eb, I don't know if you remember how we started, but we met probably, I don't know if it's 2 years now or a year and a half.
It's like 4 years now, bro. It was 2021.
4 years, I'm off.
Yeah,
Wow. Nice.
time flies.
Yeah, time flies when you're having an amazing relationship with someone.
Facts.
So the thing is with Eb and I, the relationship started with our bond between around actually Code Geass. Do you remember that?
Yep. Yep. It was
And
anime
it
code GS, and then yep.
Yeah, and then sooner or later, not too long, Eb invites me to his wedding. And if you were to ask, you know, a woman, we bonded around, for example, anime, and then he invites me to his wedding. They will think that's such a foreign concept. How exactly are you guys bonded through that? And then you invite this guy to your wedding. I mean, how does that work? And this is what I mean by male relationship is extremely dynamic and simplistic in the sense that we can really bond just out of anything. I don't know if you guys have seen the meme, but there's this one meme where you
Or if
have
you're gonna say
two
the one I'm thinking. Hmm.
yeah, so there's these two men just passing by the first time. They
Oh
just
yeah,
first
yes,
you know
yes,
what I mean?
yes,
Yeah, so
yes.
they're
And
just
then my
acknowledge
strategy
each
almost
other.
is like, "Yo, bro, do you have PSN? Do you have PlayStation Network? Yeah, yeah, I do." Best
No,
friends.
not only that, it's even more shallow than that in the beginning. So so the first encounter, they just acknowledge each other.
Yeah, like a head nod.
It's not even a head nod. It's just I see you, you see me. Okay. The second time is I saw you before. Okay, let's head nod. And then the
Mhm.
third time is they actually stop and say, "Hey, how are you?"
Yep,
Cool. And then the fourth time they actually become friends.
yep.
So this is how interesting the male relationship is with us men. It's very dynamic. It's just simplistic, and that's what I like about it. Many people, of course, many women do not understand that, but it doesn't need to be understood. It's just one of those things that's just beautiful, and we're gonna see more of this, and we're gonna talk more about this between the relationship between Toto and Yuji.
Yeah, perfect. It perfectly said. I was actually the first thing I was thinking was like a meme of I don't know if you guys seen it. It's mostly on Instagram where it's like men see, like oh remember by Debo, remember that thing you put of the tanks,
Which one?
the tank thing where the guys were putting in the soda and it was like it was a makeshift of World of Tanks or whatever, and we were both like, "Yo, this thing is sick." Remember in the Instagram group chat, you put it like a few days ago. Maybe you
I
did.
would.
We both reacted to it. Remember,
I
like the
don't
guy,
remember.
like it was kind of like in a first world person view, kind of like Cyberpunk 2077. He jumped inside like the fake tank, and then he was
Okay. Yes.
controlling.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. All
and like
right.
in the comments, it was just like men see other men happy, men like men enjoy. It was just basically simple,
Yes.
just basically like
Yeah.
we. It
Yeah.
doesn't take much to impress us. It's just like, oh wow, this looks cool. I like it. Me too. And You and I both had the same reaction. Neither of us play World. I don't think you play World of Tanks either. I don't.
No, the
But we're
coolest
just like,
thing ever.
sorry,
The coolest thing ever.
coolest thing ever. That was it. That's we were both like, oh, this is so cool. It was that simple. And we're like, yo, these guys, we're not jealous of them. You know, which sometimes you can see, right? In certain circles, like, oh, I wish I was them, or how come they get to have that, or which we often see even men. We see both men and women do, which is shaming men for basically having fun. Right? It's like, oh, if they have all this time to create something for a stupid video game, they could be productive in doing something. Nah, bro, like this looks cool. I want to try this. These, and even just like I'm not even mad at them. I'm like, these guys look like they're having a hella fun time, and that's awesome. It's as simple as that, right? And even just the way in which our relationships work, is often seen as toxic, like as if we are, as Dr. Tia Son Johnson put it. I've been doing a lot of reading while I've been away and being sick. What's the word I'm looking for? Faulty women. Like we're just like we're supposed to be like women, but we're not, and because we're not, there's something inherently wrong with us. It's like no, male relationships are just different. They just operate
Yeah,
differently.
we can be more harsh with each other, and we're okay
Facts.
with it.
Facts. Jordan, were you about to say something? Or you still you? I thought you unmuted it for a second.
No, I was actually on mute, but I don't mind adding my two
Oh,
cents
okay.
into this. So it's exactly what Debo said. We have the capacity, and in fact, the philosophy what Debo just says speaks to the philosophy of Jordan Peterson says that yeah, we are able to be harsh with each other because due to the fact that we have the capacity for violence. So because we know that there's that threat, there's that underlying threat that violence can just happen at any minute. We tend to be more conscious with each other, but then in that pursuit of being conscious, we know exactly that the world is not really easy for men. So that's why we're able to be more harsh with each other in facing reality,
No,
if
it's
that
true.
makes sense.
And another thing about how male relationships, and I'm sure you've heard this or seen this, violence isn't the end all be all for us. A lot of times,
Yes.
some of our
It's a process.
not just that is a process. That's how we engage in our friendships at times. That the actual
I was gonna
violence
get to that.
it might not be like full all out violence, but sometimes, and you can see it throughout a whole bunch of animes. Their friendships grow because of violent acts, whereas they train together, or it's like I challenge you because you're my friend. Let's get better together. It's
That's
almost like
interesting.
iron
Yes.
sharpening iron.
This guy, yo, Debo,
That's
Debo.
that's
I'm
that's
glad. I'm
very
glad
no,
Debo's here. I'm glad
that
Debo's part of this
is
group now.
that is a very interesting proposition because one example I have in mind is when you look at the relationship between Goku and Vegeta. Vegeta
That's
always
just what
wants
I
to
was thinking
challenge
about.
Goku out of friendship. It's actually out of love too. I would also argue and add it's also
It's
out of
tough love.
love. Yeah, and that's how
Tough
he
love.
expresses his love. And I think that part of the reason why we see the rise, especially in the red in the in the red space, the red pill
No, we're not
industry. I'm gonna
quite red
call it.
pill.
I'm gonna
Thank you
call it
for
the
clarifying.
red pill industry because they actually
Industry.
prop they actually they
My man said
profit
red pill
so
industry. Clip that.
they
I mean, it
actually
is the industry.
yeah
It is.
because
Sadly, it's just funny how it like the way like Jordans are taken away where because we're seeing a lot of them get exposed, where it's
and they
actually like
profit, right? They
manufactured.
profit from the insecurity of men who are not
Crazy.
socially aware to kind of like the female nature.
It's
But
true.
no, yeah.
They
So
exploit them. It's as bad as like OnlyFans and all that stuff. It's just as bad.
yeah, so it's out of tough love, and I agree with that because part of the reason is I was going to go back to my original point is one of the reason why we see the rise of the Andrew Tates is because of this sole reason. The way he delivers his message is
Correct.
extremely harsh and direct. You will think that he doesn't like men, or for example, even Kevin Samuel. You would think that they do not like men, but that's
He was
not
way
the
harsher to
idea.
men than he was to women. He,
Exactly.
he was just with women longer.
Yeah, it's true. People don't know that.
Exactly. But it's not that again, I don't really know exactly how they think, but it's kind of like the energy can feel, from the way they say things, you can tell that there isn't really a hatred for man, but they understand that in order for
Male
man
psychology.
to succeed in this so-called life, they have to face reality. Because as much as women will like us, will not like for us to say, the female nature is very brutal. It is
Very
very
what?
brutal,
Brutal.
brutal, and selective, because and it's understandable because they have to pick the best men in order to mate with. So a lot of the men they come across with who are not
They don't think.
potential suitors or maters, they kind of have to be cast aside.
Yeah,
So if
they're not.
men
They're
don't,
invisible.
yeah, they're not, yeah, exactly, they're not visible. So a lot of men need to understand this female nature, and they have to be okay with that, in the sense that, okay, I will be the best I can be and find one who's suited for me. And that's where all these rhetoric of tough love comes from, I think, from the Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate. Even though you don't like the message, I think that it's important to
It's
hear it.
problematic.
And even
But
if you
yeah,
don't agree with the message, it's important to
the fact
just,
that people are listening to it, that says something, which we said we would talk about in another episode with My Hero Academia. But yeah, the fact that people, sorry for jumping in, but the fact that
yeah,
someone, at least one person is listening, means at least one person is resonating with what's being said. We may not agree with it, but the fact that someone's listening to it does have some sort of weight or meaning to it.
yes.
I'm
And
glad you mentioned tough love because personally I think there's not enough of it going around, and I think that we as men, we strive in the presence of tough love. And to circle back to the whole point of this conversation, Todo and Yuji, there was a part where they're fighting
Hanami, the
yeah,
flower curse.
yes,
I
where
was just gonna say that one. Go on.
good point. Yeah.
where Todo told him, I'm not gonna help you until I see you do the Black Flash.
Even if you're
Even
dying
if you
front
die.
fighting Hanami, I'm not saving you until you do a black. I love that. Go on. Sorry about Depo.
So yes, and that strengthened and built up Yuji to the point where what's his name, when Gojo saw him next, he was like, "Oh, this is a different guy." And then he
Fact.
looked over and saw Todo. He's like, "Oh, he's
That
doing that."
explains it. Yeah, no, it's true. I actually love that part because that's exactly it, right? Is the dynamic of how we push each other to be better, as opposed to, coddling one another. Which, I think there's a space for nurturing and support, but there's also a need for that kind of toughness, that tough love, as we said, because unfortunately the world is not always kind to men. I wanted to say something about that. Yeah, even with some of the you guys were there, so we actually, small update on you guys in case you guys also notice the background. I got a house. I'm in a house now, just so people were just like, oh, this background looks a little different.
Congrats.
Yes, I'm in a house. I'm in the
The
basement. It's a
subtle
man cave.
flex, we
We have
appreciate it and we love it.
we
It's the
have
We
flex
love
of
the
love.
subtle flex.
he doesn't have to. We got the surround sound here. All everything set up. We got the gaming desk here. Over there, we're gonna set the sculpture and stuff, just so people know. But anyways, back on it. Even with the how we had a few weeks ago where we had that men's outing with all the young guys, right? And you guys were there as like elders, and we had some very direct and harsh conversations that I would argue, when we went to go watch that movie on Rechley's men's mental health, I would argue that some of our conversations won't be allowed in a lot of spaces, right? Even with some of the conversation that you guys may have heard. I know you guys had to leave a bit earlier, but like I'll say, you guys know how I am. I'm more on the direct side, and uh, sometimes that wouldn't be well received. Like, oh, you should say that to them, or you should say it a little bit more gently. It's like, no, they need to hear that harshness, because if they don't, that could spell the end for them it could be a very negative outcome in a different situation. Right now, it's a controlled environment where we can have those direct conversations. But if you're navigating life in not the right way and nothing said to you, it could be very dangerous. Even you and I, Jordan, had to have like some tough love conversations this year too, right? Or is this me saying, like, being very direct with you too? So I don't know if you guys wanted to kind of touch on that.
To piggyback on what you were just saying, yeah, like sometimes you need to hear harsh truths,
Mhm.
and not so much. You mentioned it, but you need to realize that the world is not going to coddle you, and there are things that are going to happen that could break you, and if you're not prepared for it, you can easily get broken, and you see it happen to so many people. I remember I've torn both my Achilles tendons, and one of the times I tore my Achilles tendon, I had to go to the hospital for therapy. So I asked my dad for a ride.
Physiotherapy, you mean?
Physiotherapy, yeah.
Yeah, before
My
people
dad
get
straight up
confused.
told me, "Yo, do you think this is what I want to do right now? I mean, you're
Sorry,
my son.
sorry, sorry for laughing. Go on.
It's real." The
Yeah,
man told me, "Yo, listen, do you think this is what I want to do right now? This is something that I have to do. You're my son, and I do need to provide, take care of you. So this is what I am going to do. It's not necessarily what I want to do, but it's something that
I
needs
have
to be
to do.
done. And this is life. You got to get used to doing shit you don't really want to do. And the easier or the faster you realize that, the better you can move on. Because once that sits in, okay, you'll be way more disciplined. Procrastination will ease off. Especially thinking, let me do what I need to do first, get it out the way, have the rest of the time to myself. With certain things like that, as harsh as it may seem, it let me know, you know what? It's okay for me to say no. Because even
Right.
if my dad
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
could tell me that taking me to the hospital with my leg all mashed up is not what he wants to do, me feeling guilty every time somebody wants me to do something for them, and I do it reluctantly because I don't want to feel the guilt of saying no. My dad telling me that, let me know, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be everybody's savior.
I want to touch on that.
Sometimes,
Mhm.
even if you've decided for today, all I want to do is nothing. If somebody asks you what you're doing, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm busy.
Yeah, that's
Too
true.
many people feel that they need to come to everybody's rescue. My dad telling me that, let me know, you know what? I'm okay to say no to people and not have
Doing
to feel
machine.
guilty about it.
That's powerful because a lot of us men, I'd argue there's more of it's more evident with black men. We have this need to be what I will call doing machines, right? You're supposed to just constantly be doing and achieving, and it goes back into even some of the conversation points on how like men aren't supposed to have hobbies, right? Because a hobby is something leisure. A hobby is not it's something that's done or achieved
Doing
for
something
the
for yourself.
exactly. It's just for the sake of doing itself, right? It's not for the sake of, earning a certain income or achieving a certain thing or getting this certain accolade, right? And so it's like, oh,
How
why is
dare you do something that only you can benefit from?
exactly right? And that's quote unquote selfish or more self-centered. And that within itself is wrong for men to do, right? You're supposed to just be, like I said, doing, achieving, acquiring resource. And when you're doing that, you're not just even doing that for yourself, you're doing it to give to other people, typically women, right, within our families and whatnot, who want us to achieve things. And also it's a thing that we feel that we need to do, right? Because no one tells us that we have any value outside of ourselves, right? And that's for a long time how men have been seen. It's like, what are you doing? What are you achieving? What are you fighting? What are you fighting for? So no, that's a very good point on that. And I love how your dad said this. Sometimes you have to think there's things you have to do even if you don't want to do it, and at the same time still giving you the power, teaching you to have the power to say no. Because too often us those of us men, we struggle with the concept of saying no. When someone needs help, even I struggle with that, right? And one of my close female friends, she had to be like, hey Bear, it's okay that you can't help, right? Like I have one in my life, including my own wife, who just be like, hey, it's okay, like you can rest, it's all right. Right, even right now I'll be open, I'm unemployed, I don't have a job right now. I'm on EI because of some things have happened
You
to
and
me.
me both, brother.
Sorry.
You and me both, brother.
Amen. We out
Explain
here.
to the people who are probably not from Canada what EI means, just so
Oh,
that they
thank
don't
you.
understand.
This is why we have the political science here, aka Jordan. Um, so it's employment insurance. So basically, the government gives you money for when you're not working. To simplify it, so because the last thing any government want, I would think, is homelessness. So I got a mortgage to pay.
Sorry to interrupt, but let me add some more context to it because you might have oversimplified it to say the government just gives you money. You pay into it while you're working.
Fair, yes.
So
Yes.
while you're working, you pay a certain percentage into unemployment insurance so that if it does come to the case where you're unemployed, that money that you paid into is what you get. So it's not like you're just getting money for nothing.
Yes, and it's 60% of what your income would be. So it's not like I'm out here living lavishly. I'm indoors. I only bought like two comics of the 50 comics I read online, and that was like, is she gonna cost more because it's a variant? Like you can't just be doing whatever you want, especially in this economy with all the inflation. Um, so yeah, no. What was I saying when I talked about? Um, yeah, for me, like my wife has really encouraged me to rest. It was actually very hard for me to get to the point of just like taking the time I need to rest, because that's the only reason why my health has improved, is because I really stopped everything I was doing, including wanting to do content creation, and really focus on my physiotherapy. I've been in physio for like 3 months now. I'm just ending it now, and like I was, in addition to seeing my physiotherapist every week, I was also doing physiotherapy every day, like pretty much every day. The only day I would take a day off would be maybe for my allergy injections, because it's a bit problematic if you doing allergy injections for your immunotherapy and you are exercising too much. And then two, the day after see my physiotherapist, because he's a personal trainer, so he puts me into work. Like I'm sweating, I need breaks, I need to take water breaks. Like he's like, hey, it's been 2 minutes. I'm like, bro, can we make it five? My legs are on fire. So yeah, it takes a lot for us to take that time to take care of ourselves, and not, and even for me, sometimes I'm like, oh, you can't, if you're not well enough, you can't work. And I have to remind myself, don't you just want to be well for the sake of well, right?
Exactly. And I think what both of you guys just said right now was well said. I think I agree exactly with what Debo's father has done to Debo in terms of his approach. I think that even though it was hard in a sense, I think that it was mandatory to kind of show Debo a level of discipline that you should have as a man, but then at the same time, a love that you should always show your kids. And I think that I don't want to speak for Debo here, but I think that he definitely felt the love, even though if the same thing was probably said to an opposing sex, then they would say, "Hey, that was pretty harsh." You know what I mean? So the thing is that the current affairs, I think what it has done is that I like to say it has diluted masculinity in a sense that
Go on, cook.
where it says for us to feel everything. If you feel sad, feel it. If you feel mad, feel it. There's nothing wrong with that because you also do see an increase of people going into therapy. And I think that's a
True.
wonderful thing. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that we should always acknowledge how we feel. We should always teach our kids how to feel. We should always show them exactly positive emotion so that they can reinforce that emotion within themselves and they can be productive human being when they grow up. But I think that there is a level of danger to that when you overextend it to the point where it
Overextend what?
becomes when you overextend that
Mhm.
you should feel
Oh, okay.
everything.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I think that danger comes where because they feel everything, you won't have the answer to everything. So you
Mm.
start to make up your own interpretation of how you feel, and that can very quickly reach a gray area. Right? So
Mhm.
I think that there needs to be a level of discipline. And I think the demonstration of what Debo's father has done to demonstrate that sort of feeling to Debo was one that was essential. And it showed Debo exactly how you should conduct yourself as a man. Just back to Eb's point, because I don't want to get too general here and just talk about emotion in a sense. of having kind of tough love with each other.
Hmm.
Eb was a very good example. I remember I was going through something very tough. And when you go through something tough, I don't know if people realize this, but you become clouded in your own way of thinking, that you
It's true.
kind of completely disregard reality. You know what I mean? So Eb was kind of like that voice of reason for me. He came in and said, "This is what happened. This is XYZ. You need to realize exactly what's going on so that you can make an informed decision." So I think that if it wasn't for that voice of reason, I don't know I'll be where I'll be. So I do want to thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome. Sorry.
I think and it did also maintain a degree of emotional intelligence with a level of discipline, so that you can be the best man you can be. Just going back to again Debo's point, if Debo's father didn't lay it out in a very realistic approach, you kind of tend to become confused that, if he didn't voice that, you'll be, well, does he want to do this? I feel like he doesn't want to do this. He's just coming along for grudge reason. But because he laid it in a way where is very honest, hey, listen, I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it because I love you. It's more
Sorry, keep
believable.
making me laugh. Sorry, go on.
It's highly believable. I'm not saying that there's any truth of lie right there, but it's extremely believable because, of course, majority of the things that we do, we don't want to do, especially if it's not our hobbies. So I can't wait to get into some of Yuji's action. I mean, look at Yuji's training.
Hmm.
There's a lot of Yuji does not want to do all of those training.
Like
He
watching
doesn't.
movies and getting punched by a stuffed bear.
He doesn't want to do any of those training. He didn't even want to do the training for him to perfect, what was it called,
The Black Flash.
the Black Flash. He
He didn't want to.
he didn't want to do
Oh
that.
yeah, because he was reluctant of listening whatever Todo had to. It's true. Yeah, he didn't want to perfect his technique. He was like, "Bro, whatever, man. I'm good. My technique's fine."
Because you also have to understand his position. I mean, it's completely understandable why he was hesitant. I mean, you have this weird character coming along in your life. He's calling you best friend after,
My
it's only been
brother,
my brother.
brother,
It's only been 48 hours. You're calling me my brother just because we like tall, big, you know,
tall, big booty woman.
voluptuous, women,
Say it
whatever.
with your chest, Jordan. I know you're trying to be,
We got to keep it PG.
proper and Congolese. We're not here for that. We're just
we
tall
got
and
to
big
keep it
booty woman.
PG. We got to keep it PG. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, well, you're calling me my brother after, how long has it been? It's only been 48 hours. And now you're telling me that I can perfect this move by just doing everything you're telling me to. Well, I don't know if that holds ground, but it's just very interesting to see their relationship and how their relationship relates back to the male relationship.
It's true. And you guys brought up some good points. So with you and I, Jordan, when we had that tough love talk, leading up to it, a lot of the mutual women in our lives were worried about me being too harsh with you. They're like, "Oh, you should let it go. I don't want his feelings to be hurt. I don't want him to have resentment towards me." And I'm like, "No, him and I need to have this conversation, whether you agree with it or not. This talk needs to happen no matter what." I'm gonna keep in mind what you guys are saying in terms of Jordan's feelings, so that I understand Jordan's sensitive and I'm sensitive too. But that's also why I care about him. So and this goes back to once again Dr. Tia-san Johnson talk about male emotional labor, right? We don't really think about the value that men bring in relationships, but it is unique, it is different, and it does require a lot of effort in its own ways. Sorry if anyone heard that. It was my wife's upstairs doing some kitchen stuff. I don't know what she's doing. And so I have to have that awareness too of not, because we can I remember even some people were even saying like, are you gonna like bite Jordan's head off? And I remember saying, why would I like rip into Jordan? Like, how is that gonna help him grow? Right. I felt it was so important, as you remember, for you to get your gift, because I wanted you to know that your value. I love you. You're my younger brother. But at the same time, you need to make some adjustments too. And I remember even my dad having those situations with me too, that, once again, that male emotional labor of, you know, you know, essentially telling you to straighten up, but I still love you, right? To have that energy, even, It makes me think of what happened with, when Yuji was thought he was about to land a Black Flash, but he was too angry at Hanami for hurting Megumi, and Todo didn't verbally reprimand him or tell him he's stupid or anything like that. He just called Yuji over and slapped him. He slapped him, and not in a sense of massive "what's wrong with you," but he just slapped him, and he was just like, "Hey, don't let your emotions," and kind of going back what you're saying, Jordan. Don't let your emotions get a hold of you in this situation. I understand you're angry. You have every right to be angry, but if you let this anger control you, you won't be able to use your technique properly. Do you feel better now? And Yuji smiled and thanked him. Like most people, "Oh, he slapped him. How could he?" And this goes back to the stupid concepts of toxic masculinity and how men are toxic, aka faulty women, because women for the most part won't do that. But just because men do that does not necessarily mean it's quote unquote toxic, or it's done out of quote unquote malice.
Exactly. And just to kind of, I know you wanted to go on, but just to kind of add to your
No,
point,
cook.
people need to understand what that slap meant. Remember, the jujutsu world it's a life or death
It's war. Yep.
situation.
Yep.
So this is why that slap was necessary. In our world, because it's way more diplomatic,
Hmm.
you can just use your words because we live in a very diplomatic society.
Hmm.
Where your words can solve issues. I mean, we still have
Ooh,
that underlying threat.
bars.
We still have that underlying threat of violence, of course,
Hmm.
but it's not. You cannot really compare that to the jujutsu world.
Yep.
To that jujutsu world, yeah. So that's why that physical kind of example was necessary because over there they speak with their fists. They speak with this idea of magic, whatever you want to call that, jujutsu magic or whatever.
Call it juju.
But
Say it. Say it with your chest. Say juju.
but juju, but they speak with that. So so that's their idea of how I can kind of reprimand someone for doing something that was not up to par. So that's very important to know. Of course, we still have in our society where people would hit you out of tough love,
Hmm.
but I don't know if you guys noticed, but that's grown out of popularity. So, for example, if you were to tell someone, "I hate my kids because they don't listen," they will say, "What's wrong with you?" You know what I mean? But 20, 30 years ago, that was
You
quite
didn't hit
normal.
your kids?
I know you didn't, but because our society has evolved. But I
Hmm.
wanted to ask Debo a question. So when your father said that, how did you feel when he said, "Hey, listen, I
To
really
feel
don't want
what?
to be there. I really don't want to be there, but I'm gonna be there regardless because I can see that you're hurt."
To be honest, in the moment, I can't really tell you what I felt, but I know shortly thereafter, I kind of felt a sense of relief because, like I said, it meant that it's okay to not want to do stuff.
Mm,
Because like I remember like I would be asked to do stuff, not wanting to do it, but
same.
give give like a screw face, like oh, you asked me to do stuff, I'm doing it, but and then get reprimanded, but like, oh, people ask you to do stuff and you're screwing up your face. What's wrong with you? When my
Mm,
dad told me that, it
Yep.
made me realize like you're asking me for help. Like I don't want to do it. Don't expect me to do it with a smile. And
you're
I'm
allowed to
okay
feel
with
essentially.
feeling that.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm not
But
just some
yeah.
robot that you order to do stuff and there's gonna be no emotion about it, whether or not I want to do it or not.
Okay, but do you feel as though you were entitled to him help you? Because if you were to look at Yuji's example, he feels entitled to the help essentially because he's been brought into it. He never asked to be part of the Jujutsu world. He's just been brought into it. So we could kind of say that there's that entitlement where he feels that, okay, I'm in this world, I ate this finger, this disgusting looking finger, but I only did so I can save my friends so that they don't die. So now because I'm in this world, you guys also want to kill me. So I gotta also because they think that the finger is gonna possess him, right? Is gonna
Mhm.
take over his body. So I have to defend myself in the event that I do come across someone who's extremely powerful that want to take the finger out of my stomach. So
So
there is that level of entitlement. So my question to you, Debo, is do you feel as though you were entitled to his help because you being his son?
um I don't like okay, I guess the best way I could explain it is to bring it back to what I said before, where it's like, you know how someone might ask you to do something and you'll do it reluctantly, whereas like you'll say okay, but like you might screw face, do it with a frown on your face, like, man, you're always asking me to do stuff, but you'll still do it, and they'll be like, you know what, don't even bother. Like if you don't want to do it for me, like don't even bother.
Oh, I've heard that before.
Exactly. See, me, I will never
Yes.
be like that because I am asking you for something. You don't have to do it. But people see that, like you asked me, the entitlement. I If I'm asking you for something, the entitlement can't be there.
Right.
So when my dad told me that, it's like, yes, I'll ask you for something, or if I need like my entitlement, if you let me get my thoughts straight here. So
Take your
you're asking me whether or not
I'll take your
I
time.
felt
Yeah.
entitled. I did feel entitled because I'm in a situation where I needed the help. Now, if the person was to be like, man, fuck, all right, come, let's go, I wouldn't be like, bro, the attitude, you don't see my leg here? I'd be like, thank you.
That's powerful. I like that. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Because again, you don't have to do it. I could take a taxi. I could go ask somebody else. You're
Do
doing
you
me a
th-
favor.
do you think there's more degree of respect towards your father for him doing that? Because
I did
he
respect.
like what you just said, he didn't have to do it, but he did
I
so.
did respect him more. And my dad's good on that because there's been other moments where he's like dropped gems that made me be like, you know what, you're absolutely right. So yeah, my dad was really good on that, where he would tell me something in the way that I would understand it.
I want to talk about communication, but I don't know if Jordan, I think you want to say
And
something.
yeah, I just want to close my remarks with by saying, it's very interesting because if you were to look at Yuji's example or his relationship with Todo, you see that he does gain even more respect for Todo once he does learn that move, Black Flash, right? Is it Black
Black
Flash?
Flash,
Yeah.
you got it. You got it.
Yeah, once he learns Black Flash, there is that more respect for him, and you can kind of see that this crazy rhetoric of we're brothers actually resonates with him
Yeah.
now. He
Mhm.
plays into that because he realized everything that Toto was doing for him was out of his benefit, was serving his benefit. Even at the same time, I would make the argument it was also serving Toto's benefit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
An altruistic benefit, but I agree. Mhm.
And it's cool how they did that though, because they didn't start calling each other brother at first.
Best friend first. Yep.
Yes.
yes.
But as the series grew on, brother, and that was brother, and it was brother for the rest of it.
Yep.
I think it's switching to brothers when they realized. Well, no, I'm not gonna say they because I think it was more on Toto's side. But when Toto realized that Yuji liked tall women with a certain, voluptuous size,
Jordan still doesn't want to say it. We're gonna get him to say it by the end of this. Go
I
on.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I actually so Yuji says it after he starts landing Black Flash. They both start saying brother. And so this even makes me think of the synergy in their relationship. And I want to touch on various characters, even people in my life. Even when it comes to us doing content creation, it's very interesting because I've been really reflecting about male relationship when it comes to also communication and the manner in which we communicate. Uh, Women tend to be more verbal. They tend to develop from whatever. I don't know that. I don't know. I haven't done research on it, but women tend to girls tend to speak earlier, like in terms of their development than boys. And there's all this research showing women mature in certain categories earlier on than boys do. And it got me to think in terms of even for me when it comes to like communication, like there's a certain I have a bandwidth for communication when it comes to messages and whatnot. And the thing I've seen, this is my anecdotal observation. I don't know if it's true or not, but for the thing I've seen with women is when they can talk about anything. And I think that ties into like women struggling with shame and men struggle with like weakness, right? So women can talk about anything. For men, what I've seen with all my closest relationships, and you guys included, is we don't have to talk. So perfect examples when it came to
Powerful.
you. Thank you. Yuji and Todo really started developing their synergy, fighting Hanami, the flower curse. But when they fought Mahito, they had a completely different synergy. They just had to look at each other. They didn't even have to call each other's name. They knew exactly what the other person was going to do when they were going to do it. They got to that point where they didn't have to say anything. It was the same thing too with Yuji and Megumi. It was the same thing with Gojo and Geto. You see that with Superman and Batman. You see that with Captain America and Iron Man. There's just like you get to that point where things don't even need to be said anymore. I just have to look at you. Even with like I said, my closest friends, like my best man for my wedding, he's supposed to call later today. I think we speak like once every few months. But I grew up with him since high school, and so we know exactly what's going on with the other person. Even like when I was struggling, when going through certain struggles with my wedding, and there was certain measurables I was struggling with, because like you've never been married before, you never had a wedding before, and so I was struggling in certain regards, and I had a lot of people querying me as to whether or not I knew what I was. Deb and I knew what we were doing, or I knew what I was doing. And he was the one person to say, there's two of them, but him in particular, he was saying, if Robert's struggling with this thing, there's something else going on. He didn't call me. He didn't text me. He didn't come to visit me to ask. He just knew if Robert's struggling with this thing, there's something else going on here. He's stressed out. And he told me afterwards, he's like, yeah, I know that. I knew you're stressed. Never spoke about it. Like we talked about a month after, he's like, I knew you're stressed. That's why I wasn't messaging you, because I know you're stressed. And that goes back into just those concepts of male relationships. Like when they were fighting Mahito, and Todo and Yuji would look at each other and they would just swap, and Yuji would land a black flash on Mahito. And then they would swap after that, and Todo would like hit Mahito and like hold him or whatever. They would just, all they did was glance at each other, as opposed to, hey, Todo, do the boogie woogie clap. There was nothing even said.
I think the perfect symbol to kind of like encapsulate everything you're saying, Eb, is the clap. It's a non-communicative act of saying to the other person, "Hey, listen, I'm about to do this. You better pick up on that." And then you're right. There was that synergy. They kind of just picked up on that. And I think what everything Eb just said was right on the money. And let me explain, because I don't know if you guys are aware, but do you guys know who Patricia Neal is?
Of course.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
he is the, you know what, I think he is the leader of this red pill space.
Not red pill space, but like male issues. But yeah, go on. Gotta be
That
careful
guy
with this.
is, yeah. So he put it beautifully.
Ahead of his
Said
time.
yeah, he was ahead of his time, but he put it beautifully. He said that for a man, we don't even, I mean, it's good to have people, in our space, but we just want you to be there.
Yes.
Like you're
Yep.
just there. It doesn't
Yep.
mean you're really in our
Want you in the
space, but
vicinity. Yep.
yeah, but if you're just there, then that's fine for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself relating to that actually,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I can actually say it. It's absolutely true.
I don't know, Debo, you want to say anything on that?
Well, anytime the name Patrice O'Neill is brought up, he's one of my. He's a guy that I wish was around here, because
Yes.
his input into today's climate.
And men's talking points. Mm-hmm.
Yes, because he was basically like talking about all of this stuff way before it became popular. Like he
Yes.
was basically doing Kevin Samuel's show before, in like the 2010s. Like girls would call up and he'd have conversations with them,
I remember seeing some of that. Mm-hmm.
very similar to what Kevin Samuels was doing. So man, it would have been really good to see him on in these spaces now. But what you were saying about the nonverbal communication is so true. For men can just sit around and do nothing, and we're good.
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, I was playing for a church basketball team, and
Mm.
the coach used to always tell me. I always see you like there's so many times where like you're not talking at all, and I told him, and to this day it still resonates with me. I love the sound of silence, like to not hear anything. I'm so comfortable with it because you don't usually hear it.
Especially with today's technology, there's always the notifications, the sounds, the music, whatever it is.
There's
Yeah.
always
And
something
yeah,
humming.
and people are just anxious with, you know what I think it is? People are just anxious with the silence.
Yes.
And that's very telling that if you feel that you have to speak, it speaks more about your character than exactly what needs to be said. So I completely
Sorry.
agree with Debo.
You also, sorry, Jordan, you got me thinking, even when where I was working, you and I had, we never actually explicitly spoke about it before we started doing it. When you and I were in the same space where I work, because you were one of the youth and I was one of the workers, you and I wouldn't talk to each other for any of the workshops or events or anything. And we never came to a formal agreement about it. Correct me if I'm wrong. We never really like said, okay, when we're out and about in the community, for work related stuff, you and I are not going to really interact. We'll say hi, but we won't really interact. We never really had that formal agreement or understanding. We just kind of did it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So I was gonna bring that into our example actually. I was
Okay.
gonna say, okay, so what Epps just said right there, he's completely right. So Eb, Eb worked for this one NGO, non for profit organization. No, I'm not gonna say
There's a
NGO. I
charity.
don't know if it's I don't know if it's a governmental organization, but it was a non for profit for sure. And whenever there was an event, I would show up. He would be there. For some odd reason, I don't know what it is. It kind of remind me of Total's clap. We just kind of understood each other. We just never spoke to each other. But it didn't mean that we didn't want to speak to each other, or it didn't mean we had some sort of feeling to each other. It was just that one unspoken rule we just didn't do. But when we did speak to each other, it's as if we didn't miss a beat. Nothing actually. It's like we
Lost.
didn't
There was no
miss
hard
that
feelings or anything. Yep.
connection. There was no hard feeling or anything. And I often, you know what? I have a little story. I often tell this to, when I'm dating someone and or even a friend, a female friend, I tell them, I said, hey, listen, I actually have this one friend. He probably lives 5, 10 minutes away from me. But what if I told you I never spoke to this person for 5 or 6 months? And then they're always baffled. They're surprised. They said, what do you mean you never spoke to the person for 5, 6 months? Are you guys still friends? I'm like, oh yeah, no. I mean, I'm gonna go see him this weekend. And whenever we see each other, it's like we never skip a beat. It's like we're still best friends. And they always get confused by that. And when I mean they, I'm talking about women in general. They get confused by that sense of not having to speak to someone for so long, yet still maintaining that energy, that connection with that person as though you guys are still brothers. When I was in Colombia, I remember I haven't spoken to Eb in so long, but the time we reunited and reconnected, I don't know if you remember this, Eb, but he gave me one of the toughest toughest kickback, and he kind of just told me, hey, listen, uh you've been acting like this. I don't think it's appropriate. Let me tell you why. This is what you should do. Just kind of like advice, and he was giving me that tough love. But when we did reconnect after all those months, it's as if you know what I mean. It's
Nothing
as if we
happened.
just saw each other yesterday.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
I think that's what I love about the male friendship relationship, is that we don't always have to be in each other's face to say to each other, hey, I still care about you. Yeah, we never spoke in probably 2 3 years or whatever, but I still care about you. We don't have to be in front of each other's face to communicate that. And I think the relationship between you see with Yuji and Todo
Mhm.
through the clapping mechanism by Todo, of course, this is a theory, and this is just my own interpretation.
Hmm.
I think that's a perfect example of that relationship. Is the idea that Toto is willing to trust someone else in his position so that he could take your position, and we don't have to say anything, but through this action here, we
There's a
will,
mutual understanding.
and that mutual understanding, we're gonna swap position and we're gonna fight that way because that's a huge burden and that's a huge risk. You
Emotional,
know,
male
it
emotional labor. Yeah. And you're actually getting me to think about, so I don't know if you guys remember at the end of season one, you remember the whole like where Megumi first did his domain expansion, and then like Yuji had like that crazy fight with the cursed womb siblings with Nobara, where Nobara, took it down. You found
Yep,
out she was like
yep.
unhinged. And
yeah,
so at the end, they found out, both Yuji and Megumi found out, this goes back into Jordan's point, both Yuji and Megumi found out that various things in both of their lives caused that incident to happen. So Yuji found out that because he ate the finger to protect, like Sukuna's finger to protect Megumi, that's the reason why that cursed thing started happening under the bridge. And Megumi found out because he needed Yuji to save him. That's the reason why he ate. That's the reason why Yuji ate the finger to save Megumi. So both of them
yes,
decided not to tell the other person because like I'm gonna protect him because I know with how for Megumi, I know with how sensitive and caring Yuji is, he's gonna really feel bad about doing causing lives to be lost just to protect me. And for Yuji, he's like, I know Megumi is really hard on himself when it comes to being a good role model for jujutsu sorcerers, and I'm not gonna tell him about the finger thing. And so they both never talked about it with each other, but they're both doing something to protect the other person.
and that speaks testament to, I'm not gonna say all men. No, I'm not gonna say, I'm gonna say all men because I think men carries a very high discipline and responsibility
You can be a male, but you may
to
not
it.
be a man. Facts.
Exactly. You could be a male, but you cannot be a man. So
Hmm.
I think that all men, I don't know, I can't speak for all men.
Hmm.
Actually, no, I'm not going to speak for all men, but I'm going to speak for most men.
Men of
They,
character.
especially men of character,
Hmm.
they share this sense of duty that I'm willing to suffer so that I can provide for you. I can take care of you.
Protect.
I can protect, and because also I love you.
Yeah.
I know that if I was to tell you what I was going through, that's going to put you in a great stress. And I don't want you to do that because I don't want
You may be
our
going through
family,
something. You
I
may
don't
have
want our
something going
family
on your
to,
side. Yep.
yeah, so I don't want our family to see that. So then they're willing to burden all that stress like into themselves. And I think that's very heroic. And I
Hmm.
think that's very brave. It's
Hmm.
not often talked about.
Hmm.
And I think because there isn't been a space for that, because we would just burden that.
Hmm.
So
And also,
we
there's
wouldn't
no
create a
articulation
space
for
for something that we would want to keep inside.
it. Hmm. It's
That
true.
makes sense, right?
It's true.
Yeah, and it often goes overlooked, but I think in many of the media that we see, whether it's anime or cartoon, they often talk about this. So when you see, let's say, even for example, Superman or Spider-Man, it
Hmm.
all speaks into that symbol, right? Into that idea that although I don't really want to do this all the time, I
Sorry.
know I
Sorry, you just got
must.
me to think of something. Because like so in the comic books, people don't know this, but Batman and Superman are actually best friends. Like Batman considers Superman his best friend. Superman considers Batman his best friend. And Batman seldom asks Superman for help just because of the dynamic of the relationship. Because he knows what Superman's already doing all the time. So unless Batman is literally dying, and even sometimes even if he is dying, he still may not call Superman just because as much as you would see it as Superman's protecting him, Batman's also protecting him in a very emotional sense as well. I don't want to burden you with
Yes.
whatever I'm dealing with in Gotham City because right now you may be in Nigeria fighting Brainiac, and I don't want to put that extra pressure on you to come help me here when you're already doing something on your own.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of these shows just speaks towards that idea that we have, men in general, men of character especially, we have the burden, this idea that in order to protect others, we have to sacrifice ourselves.
Hmm.
Whether or
About
not this is
sacrifice.
whether or not this is good or bad, or whether or not this is healthy or not, this is a matter of, discussion or argument or whatever you want to call it. But this is something that does happen, and we often see, we even see this trend in Jujutsu Kaisen, when these guys are fighting the what's his name, the Michael Jackson looking guy. No, that's
Huh?
Demon Slayer.
Yeah, I was just like,
Sorry.
you talking about Muzan? I was like, what?
That's Demon
I got
Slayer.
confused. I was like, wait, Muzan? I was like, did he mention Demon Slayer?
No, it's
Especially when he said
Geku.
Jujutsu
Is
Kaisen.
Geku. Is
Okay,
what's his name? Geku? Getu?
Geto.
Right? Geto.
Yeah.
Geto. When they're fighting Geto, they're putting their life at risk for the betterment of society. So
Hmm.
that essentially, at its essence, that's a sacrifice.
Hmm. It's true.
Many people don't see that, but they feel entitled to that sacrifice because they are a man, because
Mhm.
they look strong.
Oof, this guy's spitting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
this is a lot. This is a lot of man's reality that is not often talked about, because the men who are doing the fight, they will not talk about this struggle, because the minute they talk about it, it sounds as if they don't want to do it.
Mm.
You know what?
And
So
also, is this, the term is shut up and provide, shut up and do, right? Shut up and protect.
yeah,
You're
just
not
shut up.
supposed
Yeah,
to.
just shut up and do it. Like you have a responsibility to, but it's not. I would even go as far as to say that it's not necessarily the responsibility, but
Expectation.
exactly, it's more of an expectation, and also it's also because they take it upon themselves to do so,
Mm.
because they feel because they feel as though they have the power, they feel the expectation to do so. It goes back to that old French idea, noblesse oblige, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, or in your favorite video game they talk about.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So
Guilty as
it's
people who are wondering, because it's been
yeah,
a,
the
it's been a,
guilt,
it's almost a year since we recorded. Yeah.
yeah, guilty gear. So we often do see this trend, especially in Jujutsu Kaisen. They're always being faced with life or death situation,
Mm-hmm.
but because they feel the need to protect the public and to protect their honor,
Mm-hmm.
that they have to go through what they're going through. Now, I wanted to ask Debo, I don't know, do you find such example in your day-to-day life or anything that's happened in the past where you probably felt the need that, yeah, I don't want to tell my parents this or my friends this, that I'm going through this, but in the long run, this will help them.
I think that happens all the time where men might be going through things where they feel if they tell it to other people, the burden is now lifted from them and put onto other people. Whether it's
Yep. Yep, that's true. That's
I
powerful.
can't pay my bills, and I need help to pay my bills. I go tell my wife now. Now my wife is having. I
Stress.
just put that stress on my wife. Or I go tell a friend, oh, I need some money. I just put a financial stress on one of my friends. So anywhere you go, you're putting stress on somebody. Even that information, whether it's just you telling somebody, you don't want necessarily help from them, just them knowing that put stress on them. Like, oh, now this person is going through this. Now they're going to be stressing out about what you're going through.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, go on.
there's
Hmm.
always there's always some kind of stress, and you have to, as a man, you have to find a way to deal with it. And just to go back to JJK, when you if you look at what happens when the people cannot deal with that stress, you get a gato.
Ooh, that's a good point. That is a good point.
Debo's cooking.
Yeah.
Debo unmuted himself. He's like, I was actually just cooking something right now.
That
Let me
is a
serve it. Let me.
very good, very good point, because, and also he mentions a very interesting point. Whenever you do tell someone, for example, oh, I can't pay my bill, even though you're not necessarily asking them to pay your bill, that's kind of like where you're kind of also saying, but you're not really saying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like a cry. It's like people will try to infer from that. Are you asking for help, or are you just telling me? It's very hard for people to distinguish between those two ideas. But the point with Gato, you're right. You're absolutely right. When people, I think it was, so I've been following the election very closely, and
Hmm.
Vivek Ramaswamy, he said something very interesting. He said, when people can't speak, they scream, right? And when they can't scream, what
Violence.
happens? Exactly, you have
Mhm.
violence,
What was the
and
quote?
that's
Riot is the sound of the voiceless or something like that.
I'll search.
I can't
What was
remember the
it?
quote, but it's something like riot is the sound of the voiceless or something along those lines.
Riots are the voice of the unheard, or riots are the language of the unheard.
There it is.
to Debo's point. He's absolutely right. You have someone like Ghetto, and I think that's very powerful, and that's very telling because he symbolizes this very un
Unhealthy
unrestri-
isolation.
not that, but unresolved feelings,
Mm.
unresolved voice that he was not able to communicate. So that because he feels that now, he definitely not now, actually, I meant during that time before he became the ghetto we know today. He said, well, you know what, these people are clearly not hearing me, because he definitely has many opportunities where he did express that. He's spoken to people about some of
He
the
didn't
way
talk
he
to
thought.
Gojo about that, but I do want to talk about that a
It
bit.
was not Gojo. Yeah, he didn't speak to Gojo,
Yeah.
but because he spoke to that one woman. I forgot her name.
Todo's mentor. I forgot her name too.
Yes, it was Toto's mentor,
And she kind
and
of pushed him over the edge.
she
She did
did.
unintentionally, but yeah, she did.
She did, and as a result, look what you saw with Geto.
No, it's true. I'm trying to find her name right now. I forgot. Completely forgot her name. Yuki Sukumo. There we go. But yeah, even for me, in terms of some of my relationships, I have some men in my life. One of them is, one of my best friends, and he's like a millionaire. And I've only asked him money, yes, once. Yeah, it was once. This is during the time I'm sure you heard the episode, Debo, and then Jordan, you remember when I was falsely accused. So I wasn't getting as much work because, I couldn't be in certain spaces in community centers. And so I couldn't pay my rent. Right. I even asked my wife first. And even before asking my wife, I was like, shit, I don't have enough money. I need to come up with a solution. So I said, okay, maybe you should tell your landlord. But then going back and thinking what you said, Jordan, that becomes a stress now for my landlord because now his mortgage is impacted. So do I want to tell my landlord? I said, no, okay. Well, if I become homeless or have an issue with my landlord, that is going to be a stress for my wife, right? Well, my girlfriend then. And so, which is worse, the stress of the landlord or the stress of telling her I don't have money right now for rent? And so, looking at that and thinking about it, and obviously I've had to do some therapy work around just communication on my end, in terms of talking about challenges and vulnerabilities, going back on how men don't want to be seen as weak, right? And women don't want to be shamed. It took me until, and then I talked about it. She obviously didn't have the money then because we were just kind of hitting into COVID. And then I was like, shit. And then that's when I asked one of my best friends for money. This is the first time and going back on like kind of like that Superman Batman dynamic, because of how much money he earns, that is why I don't like asking him for money, because I know a lot of people are always reaching out to him for money. And for me, not that he would ever allow himself to be, but he's not a cash cow. He is, who I've known since high school. The money is nice. I'm happy for him, but it's not the foundation of our relationship. So I don't even like asking for money just because I know everyone around him is constantly asking him for money. Even like someone else in my family, he has a construction business. I know he's 1 to 6 figures. I don't ask him for money. Even with things being a little bit tight, not to say like he wouldn't, but just because of the nature of our relationship. And I know how, once again, how black men, like I said, are seen as doing machines. The last thing I want to ask from these guys is money, because I already take so much value from our relationship without some sort of, quote unquote exchange being met. Just you being you is good enough. But I when I asked him for money, for my rent, is because what would be worse, me asking him for money or him finding out I'm homeless in that situation? And he would have been like, bro, why didn't you just ask me for money, right? Because that's what we would do as men. Bro, why didn't you just ask me? Bro, I didn't want to burden you, like I know you're dealing with your own stress right now. I don't want to be another stress for you. But it's like, nah, you wouldn't be.
That's deep right there, and especially for us men, I know coming to somebody else for money is one of the hardest things. Like the amount of pride you suck up to be to have to do that, man. A lot of people might not understand what that is right there.
Yeah, and the thing is that especially as men, we can afford to suffer alone, but when we have the responsibility to take care of someone
Yep.
else, especially a woman, oh, it's
Oh,
oh, it's a different ballgame. I mean, we men, we can live on probably ramen noodles. If we can save enough money, we can live on ramen noodle for probably a month, and we'll be willing to take that sacrifice. But we would not do that if we have a girlfriend beside us, especially one that lives with us, like in Eb's case, or even a wife. We will not take that sacrifice because we don't want to put that discomfort onto our wife or onto our girlfriend. We want to make sure that they have the peace of mind, they're well taken care of, but at at the expense of
possibly
us
our well-being.
sacrificing ourselves.
Yep.
So, I think Eb, not to kind of use your example there, but I think that's a perfect example of what I'm trying to talk about, or what I'm trying to bring home here is, the fact that he had to put his ego aside because he didn't want to put essentially his wife in a very uncomfortable position here.
She
Or
wasn't
she
living with me, but if she found out, like, hey, Beryl, like, what's going on? How come you're like leaving in the middle of COVID? Well, oh, because I couldn't pay. Why did that would have been that would have been a stress on her. You're right. Yeah. Sorry. Go on, Jordan.
Yeah, it would have been a stress on her, and especially, you know what? She would even have to consider, so is this how it's going to be if I ever marry Eb? Is this what I'm going to have to go through? And I think those are kind of some of the thinking that women never want to question. They just want to make sure that they're well taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to worry about the rent. They don't have to worry about food.
Mm-hmm.
But what they don't understand is a lot of the background noise or a lot of the background grinding that men are doing in order to ensure that they have an amazing life.
Security.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's a lot of effort, but it's not talked about. And in all fairness, we've never been in a space to have the articulation to even talk about it for anyone else to even understand, right? But no, that's exactly it. And even like I had another situation. This all happened during COVID. So this was COVID where what was it? I didn't have my car repairs were so bad I couldn't afford it. And I actually once again I had to go to my wife about it. So I've had situations where like because of like where I was at financially, I couldn't do certain things. Right. And it had to be once again be like, okay, is it better for me to basically lose my car and it's like what happened? And then she would have been like, why don't you tell me? Or should I tell her? And I even so the repairs were like $900 and I didn't even want to ask her for the $900. I think I was asking for like 200, right? Even though like 200 would mean going back on what Jordan said, I'm eating ramen noodles for a month. At least I didn't ask for too much. At least, she only had to pay 200. I can get by with eating ramen noodles. I can do the sacrifice of eating ramen noodles. The last thing I want is for her to be impacted financially. And so she ended up saying, no, I'm going to pay for the whole thing. You need the car. This is your livelihood. You need the car. I'm going to pay the whole $900.
Man, shout out to your wife. Let me just I'm drinking water here, but let me just post your wife for a second.
That's a good
Hey,
woman.
you guys had a conversation like a month ago. So go. I know you've been waiting for it. Go on.
Go on about what?
about my wife. You guys spoke over the phone over a month ago, and then you're like, yo, this wife of yours, man, you good, you eating good. I am eating good. I am eating good. I know how to eat ramen.
Yes. Okay. So, for many of the listener who may not know, I did have a conversation. I think it was about a month ago with Eb's
Hmm.
wife, and but part of the reason why we have we had that conversation is because we had to talk about it was
Food
my
topics.
behavior.
Yep.
No, so it was my behavior in that I didn't show up when I was supposed to in our meeting with Eb, and she realized that this was a common behavior, and she just really wanted to understand where this was coming from, and that's part of the reason why I really like your wife and I really respect her. But really, I'll tell you one thing. One of the biggest thing that I really loved about your wife in terms of her character was not about what she was saying towards me, but was how she was speaking about others.
Mm.
So how she was talking about you, how she was always defending you. And I don't know if she was doing this consciously, but it sounded very much on a subconscious level. And let me give you an example. It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful.
Oh,
So
oh, Deb. Hmm.
so she would say things like, Jordan, I'm not mad that I cooked for you, I cleaned the house for you, and you didn't show up. You know what she said? She said, I'm mad at the fact that there is that level of disrespect of you not showing up to my husband. And when she said that, I said, damn, that was powerful. Because you have to understand what that meant. Even though most of the work was done by her,
Hmm.
it wasn't about her, it was about you. And so we were kind of having this conversation. She was making me understand from her perspective of how disrespectful I was for not showing up. And that's why I was able. I already respected her a lot, by the way. That's my Congolese sister right there. But just the fact that she was speaking about other people in that sort of light just made me see her in a very different way. So she would speak about other people that way. So she was speaking about, for example, her friends. She was speaking about even someone who you closely mentor, Susie, like that. Even yourself, and it was just very beautiful to hear because it was not about her, even though she could have easily made it about her, and I would have no problem. I'll still think that she's a very beautiful person, but she never made it about herself. And I think that that's a great testament to someone's character,
I
and that's what
agree.
we spoke about.
I agree. I
So
agree.
you two are very lucky to have each other, but you're also very lucky. I
Thank
just
you,
want to
Jordan.
say
I
that.
appreciate that. Yeah, no, Deb is a
And good
Deb is
and
a
good
real
for
one.
you. Good for you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, no, she's a real one, and yeah, she's always speaking life over me, and always doing her best. And she speaks. She's very compassionate. That's one of the things I love about her. She's very compassionate and very understanding.
You know what? It kind of made me. It kind of reminds me. You know when you would hear people say, "Well, why was that person able to speak to you in a disrespectful manner about someone else? What was it about your relationship with that person that allowed them to disrespect that other person by speaking to you about it?" So it kind of reminded me about that.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
Like, you
Yep.
know what I mean, in a
Yeah.
sense that with her you can tell that any disrespect to others will not be allowed,
Hmm.
because she would not allow it. And plus, because of the way she carries herself, you can just feel that you cannot bring that sort of conversation to her.
Hmm.
And I think that's the that's the hallmark of a friendship. The idea that I cannot just come to you and
Slander someone
speak
else's name.
and slander someone else's name, because your character is that of, if you do so, I will confront you about that, and I'm going to let you know not to do that. And I think that's beautiful, and I think that more people should be like that.
I agree.
I think that's a lot of people are just afraid to speak up because they don't want to come off. combative or whatever the case may be, but there's a lot of reason.
Yeah, I think that a lot of young men struggle with young men and boys, me included, for a large portion of my life, struggle with the idea of assertion and being assertive because when you're in school, your teacher's a woman, you're in a woman-centric classroom, and your principal for me was a woman, and so you're always hearing about like how men are very problematic. They take up too much space, even though racialized men are a complete different category from white men, and even the white men who are being labeled as such, for the most part, don't even fulfill those roles either. They're struggling just like everybody else. You're under this feeling that you have to minimize yourself, otherwise you're toxically masculine, quote unquote. You're mansplaining, you're man spreading, you're man doing. We have all these negative terms for men. It's crazy, but for some reason misandry doesn't exist, only misogyny, right? We have all these negative things that men just are constantly doing, and so you just learn to kind of avoid taking up space. You avoid being audacious, you avoid being bombastic, you avoid being assertive, and it's like you won't get anywhere in life if you're trying to get everybody to like you. And first of all, just by existing, not everybody's gonna like you.
A very interesting question to ask you both. Do you think that the relationship between Toto and Yuji ever at one point, even for a split second, turned toxic? I'm just putting it out there. I really, yeah.
I don't know, Debo, you want to go first? I'm thinking right now. If not, I can give an answer right now.
When we ask a question like that, we have to talk about whose standard of toxic are we talking about?
Baba Debo. That's my nickname from now. Baba Debo. Go on.
If we're gonna talk about current society definition of what toxic masculinity is, off rip, the relationship is toxic.
Of course, they're talking about objectification, quote unquote objectification for women.
They're objectifying women off rip.
Yeah, there you go. Quote unquote
off rip. They're canceled off rip. If we're talking about today's standard of toxic masculinity,
which is associated to black men subconsciously, but that's a whole different thing. We'll probably talk about another time. Go on.
However, if we're looking at it from what I would say is a realistic viewpoint, no, absolutely not. If anything, it's one of the better depictions of a big brother, little brother relationship, because at every turn, Todo is speaking life into that man. Todo is that guy's biggest cheerleader. Season 2, Yuji is literally incapacitated in the fetal position, just stressed out.
I got the quote if you need me, but go on.
Go ahead, do it. Go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna give
that alley-oop is beautiful.
Or is it? The bells of the John Monastery in India echo with a warning that all things are impermanent. The blossoms of the Sala trees teach us through their hues that what flourishes must fade. The proud do not prevail for long, but vanish like a spring night's dream. In time, the mighty too succumb. All are dust before the wind. However, we are the exception. Pass it back to you. Baba Debo.
Do you have more?
No, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Well, he cuts off partially before he gets to like the last two sentences, and he says, however, you and I are the exception. Unless you want me to talk about what he said to Yuji afterwards, and I have that too.
Go to the afterwards.
Okay. So Yuji was saying how like he can't do it anymore. His resolve is broken. How there's no point to keep going on. And then that's when Todo said, "Brother, a man as great as you shouldn't let yourself grow so small. We are jujutsu sorcerers. You, me, Kugisaki, Mr. Nanami, and all our allies are jujutsu sorcerers. So as long as we continue to live, our dead comrades have no truly have not truly been defeated. What have they entrusted with you? There's no need for you to find your answer to that right now, but until you find the answer, you cannot stop moving forward.
I love
That's
it.
the one.
I love
That
it.
was the one.
There's always a tomorrow. As long as that heart's still beating and you have a tomorrow, you keep going. I love it.
Now, to go back to Jordan's question, was there anything toxic about that?
By society standards, I would say yes. It's just the aspect of, Todo didn't get down on one knee, held Yuji, and they both are crying together and they're weeping about Nanami and Kugisaki, and they're just moping on the floor while Shibuya is being destroyed. That would have been, the better thing to, quote unquote, better thing to do. And this goes back into what your experience with your dad, Debo, which was, I'm going to acknowledge the feelings here, but it's not going to be the center stage of what's going on right now. What's the center stage of what needs to get done? What needs to be done? Feelings are important and they're acknowledged, but there's certain things that need to get done regardless. And right now, there's the role and responsibility we have as Jujutsu sorcerers, and that's something I loved. Right? He just told Yuji like, "Hey man, I hear you, but you can't let this stop you. You're better than that." And that's ultimately what inspired Yuji. And even for me as like a man, the last thing I need sometimes is someone to like coddle me. I don't need that. I need someone to like, keep me going. Like even with all my physiotherapy and whatnot, like my physiotherapist on like, "Oh, Ebel, are you okay?" And he's hugging me. Bro, trying to push through. Maybe give me another minute because my legs are on fire, but I need to push through with what I need to do. Sorry, you're about to say something, Jordan?
Yeah, so I was gonna say the reason why I ask you to that question is because although, I think we all agree in the sense that Toto's teaching style can be aggressive, but it also been helping Yuji.
Mm-hmm.
However, Toto's overbearing nature can be, it can be something, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, his imposing views on his taste in women that
Oh.
might seem overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
at times, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that Yuji takes this in. He doesn't feel he doesn't feel forced or burdened to accept his views in
Women.
the tall in women,
Tall
but
women.
it
You say?
can be misinterpreted. That's the reason why I asked that question. So it was very interesting to hear Debo's opinion on this, because I think he said it beautifully. um in our society, we could kind of see how, no, first, no, he said it depends how you answer the question. It depends what you mean by toxic. And then in our society also, you can definitely see how that can easily turn toxic.
Yeah, even I'm thinking about like the hidden inventory arc where we're seeing the time like pre-time skip Gojo and Ghetto, and like I think they only checked in with like genuine checked in with each other the whole time like once. Prior to they're like, nah, he's fine, he's good, he's all right. So like, you're not, and that would even be seen as very problematic, right? Like, oh, what do you mean you call him? How do you know he's safe? He's like, because I know him. I know who he is. I know what he's capable of. And if he needed help and genuinely needed help, he would call me. He would tell me. And because he has it, I know he's okay. So I don't need to call him. I maybe call him like maybe, and like I said, they checked in each other like once, and that was it. I think it was after the first like attempts at killing Rio were, and it was only just like, hey, I beat my guy. Did you beat yours? He's like, yeah, I beat my guy too, and that was it. Y'all are both mute if you guys want to say something. But that's the one of the things that I liked about it is the fact that like one thing, it also goes back on the whole communication thing. It doesn't need to be this constant back and forth. It's more of a check-in, if anything, or the synergy, which who there was another one. Oh, that was the other situation where Mahito did his, I think this was perfect, along with like the whole boogie woogie clapping, was like when Mahito did his 0.2 second domain expansion to inhibit Todo's abilities without like activating Sukuna within Yuji. You saw how like I really loved how they did it. So Mahito activated his domain expansion, and Todo witnessing that, they did not look at each other at all. Yuji charged at Mahito, and Todo went to his anti-domain expansion pose. They both like did what they needed to do. They didn't look at each other. They knew what the other person was going to do. Yuji knew, I need to go protect Todo because I have Sukuna in me. I'm going to attack Mahito. Todo's like, I need to protect myself and make it easier for Yuji to protect me. So I'm going to go into my anti-domain pose. I'm not going to ask Yuji if he's running to go in my. We don't have time for that. It's action. We need to get this done. I'm going to go into the anti-domain expansion pose. Yuji's not looking back to see if Todo's going into his anti-domain expansion pose. He's already going in, and you're seeing that dynamic once again where they both know what the other person needs to do, and they're getting it done. It's not this, hey, did you, or like when even us men are doing things, hey, did you pick up that thing, or oh no, you got it done. If you didn't get it done, he would let me know. It's as simple as that.
Yep, that's a good point.
And then the other relationship I also wanted to touch on is what's it called? Yuji's relationship with Mahito. I don't think that's talked about enough. It's a very toxic relationship. Like I think we can call that toxic. That is downright toxic and abusive. Mahito's doing whatever he can to ruin Yuji's day and his mental health and traumatize him. And Yuji's just trying to take this guy out. He's like, I'm tired of this guy being a menace in my life. I need to just smoke this man, right? And because of that, it kind of goes back on what Badebo said, which was iron sharpens iron. You really saw how both Mahito and Yuji's skills really develop from that mutual antagonism and rubbing against each other in every interaction. Their first interaction, Mahito developed domain expansion. He couldn't do it before until he was confronted with Yuji. And it was only through Yuji that Mahito was able to, enter his Frieza state. And I don't know if you guys noticed that he basically looked like Frieza in his final form. It was kind of funny, but it was only through his interaction with Yuji that he was able to do that, right? And Yuji too. Yuji was able to actively do Black Flash on command in his fight against Mahito in ways that he couldn't before. They all improved. And I would say, somewhat including Todo too. They all improved from that conflict, which makes me think of competition with men. We push each other in those regards, right? And there's all this kind of shit talking and antagonism, but it never gets really personal. But at the same time, you're pushing each other. Oh, that's all you got? That's all you can do? My most improvement in esports and whatnot is through some of my closest friends were just pushing each other, or chatting each other. Like, bro, I thought you said you're hit. You can't do it. What's going on? Right? We have that antagonism that that overt antagonism towards each other, where you're just kind of pushing each other to be better.
We love playing one-upsmanship.
Thank you. One-upsmanship. I like that term actually. That
one-upsmanship.
Is that you? Is that you, bro?
Oh, that is not me. This is a pretty. I think it's a pretty old term, but I'm sure you know what it is. It's like oh, check out the new car I just bought. It's a BMW convertible. Oh, really? BMW convertible, eh?
I got the SUV convertible. So, you got that? What? He got the SUV convertible? Yep.
Men love doing that shit.
Yep.
You know what? The crazy part is I found myself doing it without even realizing that I was doing it.
Okay.
It's like somebody told me a story about them I think it was about them meeting somebody famous, and my immediate thought was to just tell a story about the famous person that I met. I'm like, why did I do that?
Yep.
That's a really good example. That's a very powerful example, because I think that many people would often tell positive stories about themselves, and then in response, the people that they're telling the story to would respond with a similar story or something better or something like that.
One-upsmanship. Yep.
Yeah, but but then again, someone can argue and just say, well, maybe they weren't trying to do that on a conscious level. Maybe they're just trying to be relatable.
Hmm.
That makes
That's true.
sense.
But here's
Hmm.
the thing. That's what I was just about to say. When, and that was an example. To be honest, people do that
Yeah,
just to like kind of get one over on the next person.
yeah,
Sometimes people do it um subconsciously, where it's like it's not even something they realize that they're doing. But also, people do it in the like the opposite to like what Jordan was saying, not just to like get relatable, but to kind of like make somebody feel better about what they're going through. So, for example, if somebody just had a family member that passed, you're gonna one of the things the first things a person might do is say, "Oh yes, I know how you're going through. I had a family member pass too." Like if you had something
True.
like a tragedy happen, so a lot of times somebody's first thought is to tell a story about a similar
Relate.
situation.
Yep. That's true.
yeah. Because it's like when someone tells you something amazing, it's like, I mean, yes, you can respond with the old conventional way of just saying, "Oh, nice," but then the conversation ends there, and then the opposing person hearing this will probably just think, "Oh, are they not happy?"
No, it's
But
true.
but they are. They said good. Oh, that's wonderful. But it's like, what more do you add to that if you're not going to be relatable to the person? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I would
But
also,
yeah,
sorry, no, go on, Jordan. Finish. Yeah.
no, you can add your point because I was then going to address your original point about the relationship between Yuji and Mahito.
Oh
But
no, I'm not gonna forget my point. You can go ahead.
okay, so yeah, you're right. So everything Eb said right there, yeah, I think is completely right. They have opposing philosophy. I think Yuji's belief is more of he values human life, where for example
Mahito
is
and Yuji,
Ma-
right?
yeah, exactly. Yuji values human life
Hmm.
deeply, and he fights to protect others,
Hmm.
even at great personal costs.
Hmm.
And
Sacrifice.
sometimes he would go as far as not even killing the person when he has to,
Hmm.
because if he leaves that person alive, that person could probably kill more people. Where,
Hmm.
for example, Mahito, because he's a cursed spirit born from
Humanity.
human hatred,
Yep.
yeah, and negativity,
Hmm.
he's completely devoid out of empathy.
Hmm.
So he's the exact opposite of
Misanthropy. Hmm.
Yuji.
Hmm.
When I look at this, it's so interesting because sometimes opposing philosophies can
Hmm.
actually bring interesting development. So
Yep.
what I mean by that is if we look at, for example, even Goku and Vegeta.
Hmm.
Goku, if you're a kid and you're looking at Goku, you'll think that he represents peace. He represents good. And if you look at Vegeta, you'll think that he represents evil.
Hmm.
All right. I mean, as a kid knowing that, I don't think that's a foreign concept. But regardless, as the series go on, Sega after Sega
Saga after
becomes
saga before someone
Saga
actually
after
keeps talking
Saga.
about Sonic.
The thing is that they bring each other's capability at its best. So, Vegeta, he is able to achieve Super Saiyan
Hmm.
because Goku achieved Super Saiyan.
Yep. Now
So
he
he
knows it's
pushed him.
possible. Yep.
Yeah. So he realized that because Goku has done it, I have to also push myself. So sometimes competition also has a good effect. Of course, one can also argue that they have an adverse effect, of course.
Hmm.
But in this case, it's just so interesting because if I was to relate this to my personal experience, I've had many situations where not only me, but I have observed, for example, the youth of Toronto. You would see that a lot of our youth in Toronto, they will turn into doing not so good thing. They'll probably turn into crime or they turn into drugs or whatever, because they realize that brings fast money. And part of and they see other people doing that, people who were probably once good to them, but then they go quickly and turn into that because they say, hey, you know what, like, yeah, you can always be good, you can always turn good, but let me just bring this money really quickly. But in the process of doing so, it corrupts one's soul. And I think that's part of the reason why Yuji just never kills, because he understands the impact of killing. And once you do kill, then you always leave excuses
It
for
opens up
always.
it opens up a gateway to other, I guess you could say, vices, among other things.
Yeah, and once you start, you continue doing that because you've already
Exactly.
started. It's very hard to open that barrier if you never committed. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Such crime, but well, once that door is open, it's over. But just going back to you were gonna say something, Eb.
Yeah. Well, I was going to just to kind of touch on your point. It makes me think of what Iron Man said in one of the comics, which was he asked somebody, it was like, "Have you ever killed before?" And the person said no, and he said it gets easier after the first time. But
Bingo.
pulling off of that, yeah, the whole idea of one-upsmanship can lead to very positive things too. In the sense of, so I'll just read you remember when Todo, so during the fight with Todo, Yuji, and Mahito, Todo eventually was the only person who didn't land a black flash, and that's when Todo was just like, no, 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 this can't be me. I remember so I have it where he was just like, this cursed spirit is already landing black flash too. I'm the one left behind right now. You've grown strong, brother. Are you satisfied with that, Aoi Todo? Are you planning to leave your brother alone once again, Aoi Todo? So even once again, that going back on that big brother role, that very sacrificial, it's not about me role. I can't leave him behind me. He's done all these amazing things. I can't just leave him where he's at. I need to be on this journey with him. I told him he can't shrink himself, so I need to step up too in terms of being the big brother and also landing a black flash, which for those who are maybe listening who aren't watching Jujutsu Kaisen, black flash is like this ultimate technique that you only do by accident for the most part. It's like landing the easy example would be like landing a full court shot, not even half court, because you can practice for it. You see Steph Curry does all the time, full court shot, and to do it willingly and for it to not to go off the backboard but straight into the rim. It'd be the equivalent of that in a real life example. So Toto was the only one who didn't land a full court shot essentially, and so he said, no, this can't be me, and he ended up landing one just to be able to be on the same level as Yuji and Mahito, the cursed spirit. And it's the same thing which I feel with some of my friends, like Badebo, like when you're in your field, you're earning like almost twice as much as I do, but like I don't see it as a bad thing. If anything, I'm just happy for you, right? Even with my very rich friend, I remember him telling me like how much it's crazy when he was talking about numbers. And I remember he was just talking to me about some of the numbers that he does. And he was like, yeah, I make this much in 3 months. And I was like, bro, wait, what? That's my year's salary. What do you say? You make what you do in 3 months? I do in a year. That's crazy. But you also, the one-upsmanship can go two ways where, you're like, oh, he thinks he's better than me because he has this or has that or has this card. It's like, not necessarily. It's just, that's where they're at in life. And you want to have people who you can inspire that one-upsmanship, but at the same time, they're happy for you. Because all the men in my life who inspire me, like I could feel inferior. Jordan, you're 8 years younger than me. Our salary is very close. If not, you might be bordering higher than me. But does that mean I'm less of a man or less of a person? No, right? It all depends on but I see that as very inspiring. I see that as amazing. You can be happy for your brothers, but at the same time, they can also inspire you to be better. That's the same way you saw interaction, right? You didn't see, Toto, sulking and having inferiority complex towards Yuji. He's like, no, I need to step up as his big brother. Sorry, I think Debo, you were about to say something.
You brought up an excellent point there where you said there was no like animosity with the one-upsmanship because you don't want to be doing or playing one-upsmanship with the wrong people, because playing one-upsmanship with a circle of haters is just
Circle haters.
is pretty much putting a target on your back.
Yeah, no, yeah, literally sometimes. Nipsey Hussle.
Perfect example.
Good example.
No, it's true, right? You want to have those right people who are supporting you, who are happy for you for whatever you achieve without, being antagonistic towards you, right? Like with one of my friend who introduced me to Guilty Gear, he sees like how I've done in tournaments. He's not going to be like, oh, you think you're better than me because you're doing. No, he's like, yo, bro, I'm happy for you. You're doing really good in tournaments. You're doing all this, and you also the community work you're doing. This is amazing. Like you're doing amazing things, and we're both happy for each other in our respective fields. And it inspires us without trying to be unhealthily competitive with each other. Where I'm like, I need to be a millionaire. I don't need $1 million. He did it because it's what he wanted to do, and I'm happy for him, and that's not what I need. And we're both happy each other for what we're doing respectively, and we're inspiring each other. He, it's inspired me to, work harder and have a better income to provide for my family. And for him, he's actually starting to get more into community work because of the stuff he sees me do. We both are doing our own things and we're inspiring each other without trying to be like, oh, he must think I'm a bitch because he earns, if you didn't see, I think that would mean he earns 4 times what I make in a year. So I think if I'm doing the math correct, I suck at math. That means he must think I'm better than him. Plus, I needed money for him, so he must think I'm a bitch times two. It's like, no, that's not the nature of our relationship, right? Um, Even with me not working, Deb was worried about my relationships with you guys, in terms of how you guys would see me. And it's like, no, like that's not the nature of our relationships. Yeah, I may be unemployed, but doesn't mean like my, I don't know, like my penis and my balls fall off, right? It doesn't happen like that. If it would, if you get what I'm
Yeah,
saying. But
you didn't leave your balls at the door. Is what.
that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a better way of wording what I was saying. Yes, you didn't leave your balls at the door. Yes,
Yeah.
which is not the same. Which is not the case for Okarun in Dandadan, but that's a different. We'll cover that one another time. Golden balls.
Yeah, I think one of the worst feeling is when it is exactly what Eb said, right? When those feelings get internalized. And what I mean is, in the beginning, it may not be evident that you probably, you probably feel a type of way with the person who's earning more than you. But down the line, that can internalize into, wait, so this guy didn't pick up this time. Is it because he thinks he's better than me? You know what I mean? Or he
It's
doesn't want to
crazy.
see
It's
me as
funny, but it's
often anymore. Is
crazy.
it because he's making more than me? He doesn't want to see me anymore. Okay, he doesn't want to do this with me. Okay, so is it because of this? So I think that's where that's when it turns toxic,
Hmm.
because you have to first internalize those feelings, right? I don't think that people often realize it outright.
That's the bar. Hmm.
But once it becomes internalized, that's where it becomes extremely toxic, and those internalization. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, man,
It's a killer.
it's a killer. It's a killer for all these relationships. But for me, when someone is doing better than me, I look at my potential. Not to say that my potential ends with where they're at, but for me, it's seeing it like I can also reach there.
Mm.
I can also do what they're doing. Not that we come from the same environment, but because they have done it, they've proven that it works. So I think that's why I love it when people are doing better than me.
Mm.
And they don't even have to do better than me in terms of just
Just
financial
doing
sake.
well in their own respective kind of field or
Yeah,
category.
it can be relationship.
Yep.
It can be education.
Yep.
It can essentially just be even food, right? Like eating healthy.
Oh, okay. I was like, what? Okay, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's true. Whatever it is, dieting, which is
Said
like
what?
food. Like, I don't
No,
get
it,
it.
it can even be, they
It
eat
makes
better
sense.
than I
Yeah.
they eat better than I do. And then,
Yeah.
I'm going to inquire. I'm going to say, well, how exactly are they eating better than I am? I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, what do you do? How is it that you're able to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every single day, and you can do the work that you do,
Hmm.
you eat the food that you do,
Hmm.
and by 10 p.m. comes, you still have that energy? How
Hmm.
do you do that? So
For
I
sure.
find inspiration in everything. I think that if you just find inspiration in finance, you come to realize very quickly that not only will your potential limit, in that you're not going to look for other experiences,
Hmm.
whether that's education, whether that's having a more open mind, but your friendship, the potential friendships you can make also limits, because you're going to think that, oh, because they don't have such finance, I can't be friends with this person.
You think yeah, it's true. It's true.
You know
And
what I
that
mean? But
ends up
yeah.
sabotaging because eventually you can meet someone who's earning much more than you. Like, oh, I can't be friends with them because they're making more than me, or oh, as you said, they didn't answer because they think they're better than me.
Exactly. And the thing with finance, many people don't understand is that I think that you could definitely learn way more from failure than you can from people who succeed. Because people who succeed, or you have to understand how success works. They succeeded because they were there at the perfect time, right? It's all about timing, right?
Literally.
They've had the resources and they probably built the connection.
Yep.
All of which you will never ever find yourself in that same position because one person's time will always be different from another person's timing. This
And
is
I
this
snap my
is
finger on that one.
yeah. So
That's
this is what.
exactly it. Mhm.
Yep.
No, that's exactly it. Because I was just gonna say because even when I look at you, you're like I think you're 8 years younger than me if I remember correctly. 35, 20. Yeah, it's about 8 years. I think about like man, if I was earning that much when I was his age, I'd have 10 more sculptures. And it's just like because I would have, if I had your income by your age, I would have been buying like sculptures like crazy. I would have, Jordan. I would have had like 3 times the amount that I have here, right?
Yeah, but the thing with me is I just look at just the expertise you offer. It's so invaluable that even money would never ever be able to buy that.
Thank you.
So remember that whole experience I went through in Colombia.
Mm,
You could get some of the most richest person if the guy just threw money at me. I would say, well, okay, thank you, but it doesn't really solve my problem.
mhm.
I still have to go through this emotional trauma. I mean, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, no, it's true.
I probably would have stayed in that same very toxic environment for a very, very long time. But because I was able to connect with someone who had experience or who was familiar with that sort of trauma, help me out of that trauma, is why I can say such experience is extremely invaluable.
Yep. And
And you
I would
shouldn't
just to
just
kind of
limit your experience to just financial experience. You should also try to broaden your experience. So every single type of experience,
facts.
whether that's finance, whether that's friendship, whether that's health reasons, whether even working out reason, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You always have to broaden your experience.
Yeah. I don't know, Debo, all your personal connections, and I know Jordan, you have someone that is close to you who's a very well-known professor. And the thing that having affluent friend, I guess you could say affluent friends, is that like the thing you'll learn is that money doesn't buy you happiness.
Yes, and the friend you speak of, yeah. So this guy, I don't he's probably worth tens of millions of dollars, but he always wants my company. So what does
There
that
you
tell you?
go. Hmm.
What does that tell you, right? Is
Hmm.
that yes, he can afford some of the best, the best medicine, the best food,
Everything.
everything.
All. Yep.
But he would always tell me, he said, yes, money, it matters. Don't let people tell you who have money that it doesn't matter just because they have it. It matters, yes. But once you have it, you come to realize that it's actually the connections and the experience you build and you make that matters
Hmm.
the most.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
I don't. Is there any? I wanted to kind of
so,
touch on what you said, but I don't know if of Debo you wanted to add.
yeah.
No, I'm good. What would you like to add to the
Oh, no.
conversation
Oh,
there?
sorry. No, go on. Were you about to say something, Jordan?
No.
Okay, yeah.
I went on mute.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just simply gonna say, yeah. So, I don't have the statistics on me, but I've read that there's actually a correlation with money and satisfaction slash happiness, and it actually plateaus at a certain point. So once people hit about and given take into account inflation, but once people hit about $200,000 a year, there's a diminishing return of money per dollar value of happiness. Like it actually plateaus around 200,000. After that, you're not, and that's why you see all these very rich people. You see all the foolish mistakes of Johnny Depp and what's his name, and Diddy, the diddler, right, and all these other very rich, affluent people, and how you'll see them do crazy things. They'll have depression, all these things, because you get to a point where like you can only buy so many yachts. You can only buy so much, gaming PCs and life size. I don't have any life size sculptures yet. God willing one day. But giant sculptures and cars and all the and clothes. There's only so much things you can buy before.
You ever play a game and
I know
put
you're
in
about to say go
every
on.
cheat code
Mhm.
Oh yes,
and then it gets boring?
GTA.
Yep. Or actually, I have a better example. Like when you're playing like RPGs and stuff for games where there's currency, and then you get to that point in the game where you can't buy any more weapons, you can't buy better equipment, you start for anything, you have to craft it. Literally, you start doing fights, and you just have all this amount of money in the game you have nothing to do with now, but you just have like 100 million Jill, like in Final Fantasy, but there's nothing to use the money on. Like maybe buy some ingredients for food, and that's about it.
I think the perfect way to describe the feeling, as you just said it, was when I was playing Elder Scrolls. I
Mhm.
think it's Elder Scrolls.
Is it Elden Ring, you mean, or Elder Scrolls?
Elden. I think it's Elder Scrolls. What's the
The most recent?
not the most recent, but the one game when you're like a dragonborn? Is that Elder Scrolls?
I think it's Elder Scrolls. It's either Elder Scrolls or Skyrim.
Skyrim. There it is.
Yeah.
Skyrim. It's Skyrim.
Mhm.
So I found a code that made me like stupid OP in this game. Like I
Right.
had like the sickest gear, and the
Mhm.
game just got boring.
Mm. That's
Like
a really good analogy.
I could do whatever I want, and it was boring. There was no challenge. I'd fight a guy, and one shot, every guy, one shot. It got so boring. So I guess maybe that's what happens when you get all this money. Life just gets boring. What's left to do?
Yep.
What can you
Yeah,
possibly do that hasn't been done?
I mean, I think a perfect example is look at the submarine billionaires.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that. You
I
guys,
know, I know,
I
I
shouldn't
know.
laugh at that. I shouldn't laugh at
I
that.
was
Go
laughing
on.
at your reaction. That was funny. But no, but look at the submarine billionaire, right? I mean, how bored do you have to be to risk your life to that extent?
It's true.
And I
With your
think that
son. I think the
yeah,
son was in this.
with your son. But I think it also doesn't even extend to just money. I think it also extends to talent and experiences. So let's look at, for example, Gojo's experience. Gojo's a OP. When did I don't I've never seen Gojo train.
It was like in his teens, when he finally unlocked like the true aspect of infinity and the red aspect. That
Yes.
was when
So
he
that was in his
really,
team.
and then that was
But
it.
but with Gojo, I mean, okay, adult Gojo, when she saw Gojo matured and he was with Yuji, I've never seen this guy train. He's so lazy. He's probably just speaking to women. He's not doing it. He's completely bored out of his mind.
Yep. He's the
And it,
strongest.
yeah, so I guess it speaks to the nature of how men need, we need competitiveness.
Hmm.
We need the idea to always be competitive because it brings the best out of
Adversity
us.
and challenge.
Yeah, we need challenge, we need adversity, we need trials and tribulations. We have to be extremely competitive because once we're comfortable and we have nothing to do, we
Complacency.
what would we do is if we were to look at political history, we start to wage war because we don't know
Ooh,
what else to do.
someone's cooking right
We
now.
just start to conquer things. But in the process of doing so, we come to realize that wait, maybe I have to just, teach what I know to the younger generation because I don't know what else to do and I have all this knowledge, I have all this money. So let me just pass this on to my kid.
That's one of the things so without going into, we'll talk about him at another time, but that's one of the things that I loved about how they handled All Might in My Hero Academia. Like I said, we'll have a bigger conversation about it, but one of the things that is so common in media, whether it's anime, video games, comic books, is that the benevolent, loving father, like almost always dies. We're talking about Superman's adoptive father, Pa Kent. We're talking. I remember when Final Fantasy 15 came out, and I remember we're seeing like, so the main character is like royalty. He's a prince, and we saw the dad, and the dad looked like an arrogant piece of shit. So we're like, oh shit, probably had to fight the dad. Then you find out in one of the following trailers. I remember me and my boy, the rich one, we were watching a trailer, and we're just like, we saw how like the dad was taking care of the main character. He's very like loving, doting father, very supportive of his son, very respectful of his servants and his kingdom. And we're both like, ah, shit, he's gonna die. He's gonna die at the beginning of the game. He's not gonna live. If he was evil, he would have lasted until the end of the game, or you have to fight him at the end. But because he's such a loving, supportive father, he's gonna die right at the beginning. Spoiler alert: he dies right at the beginning of the game.
No, that's a very interesting observation, by the way.
They had to
I
kill him because that's gonna be the motivation for the MC.
For sure, but like, so when it comes to moms, they're not always killed. It's not always as consistent. But with the dads, it's like almost all the time. Like Ma Kent may or may not die in Superman mythology, but if it's there's never a Superman storyline where his adoptive father's alive and his adoptive mom is has passed away. It's always his adoptive father slash his adoptive father and his adopted mom. It's never the dad is alive and the mom is there, right? It's always like the good dads, evil dads. Oh, like Charles Reed Britannia. He's around until the end of the series, right? But when it comes to like good dads, I was just like, they always go. That's what I was looking at it. I was like, this guy's gonna die at the beginning of the game. So I was always expecting. I know it's a bit of a spoiler for you, Jordan, but I was expecting for him to like violently kill All Might because he's not. And this goes back into how us men see ourselves, where your value is based off your virility, your physicality, what
or
you
the
can
amount of
physically do.
sacrifice you make.
Exactly, as opposed to kind of being like the Uncle Iroh, remember from Avatar, right? The older male figure. We don't, the splinters, Ninja Turtles, right? That older man who's there to guide you in the journey. The Obi-Wan Kenobi, who also dies at the beginning
Yep.
of the first Star Wars movie. But the idea of like that older
Thor,
male figure
is it
to
Thor's?
guide you. Sorry?
Your boy Thor's.
There you go. Thor's right at the beginning of Vinland Saga. You're like, oh, this guy's such an amazing dad. You're right. That's exactly why we're taking him out at the beginning of the show. And we're going to remind you of it in every arc, right? So just seeing that
That's true.
as
Yeah.
opposed to even, another one that came to my mind. The mentor and father figure of Captain America, Dr. Erskine. He gives Captain America the super soldier serum. He gets off in the next scene / panel, right? So
Uncle
there's always
Ben.
that Howard Stark, Iron Man's dad. Like it's always a theme of the dads don't last. Moms may survive. Dads who are good, nah. Father figures,
No, but I've come to realize that this idea of male figures dying, especially direct family, like your father, is way more prevalent. I mean, in Eastern philosophy, so the anime world, as opposed to Western media that you see with like the Spider-Mans and whatnot. I don't
Uncle
know.
Ben. It does happen. It's very common in both sides. That's the reason why, like, that's why I said I was really surprised that they didn't do that with All Might, is because they do that all the time. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but I do question the message is conveying to boys and men about the value of your life when you're no longer physically capable.
You need your
Yeah,
daddy to die to be
there was
somebody.
I was watching this one
Mhm.
interview by Jack Ma. He's the founder of Alibaba.
Oh wow.
Uh a very kind of just a clone of Amazon in
Yeah,
China.
yeah. The hit
And
or miss Amazon. Hmm.
he said something very interesting. He said, I of course you're right. You are seeing this trend changing, but at the time he said this, he said in Western media, you see, for example, oh, Superman, he doesn't die, or Spider-Man, he doesn't die. Like these heroes, these direct heroes are being celebrated. But for example, when you go into Chinese culture or the anime culture, it's like the main character dies. And that's not a novel idea when the main character dies. Whereas, for example, the main character in Western society, they don't die. In fact, they're celebrated. And I remember the first example of this was Goku. Because remember, Dragon Ball Z was my first anime that I've watched
Yeah, yeah.
in the Eastern world. And I was surprised. I questioned myself. I said, main characters die?
I see you. Yeah.
I said, let's be honest, most main characters tend to be men, right?
Yeah.
So I
The hero's
that that
journey.
yeah,
Hmm.
the hero's journey. So I never really fathomed this idea that main characters die. So when I came across Goku dying, I
Mm.
said, well, that's it.
Mm.
That's the show. But then the show continues,
and
Attack
he
on
goes into
Titan.
the yeah, 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 that's a good example. Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's very. I know you're speaking more into the
The
father
father figure,
figure.
the patriarch, the patriarch, the father figure. Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's a different, and that's the reason I would say like that is a stronger. That's a strength within Eastern storytelling is the fact that like they are willing to take more liberties in terms of selling their story, as opposed to everyone stays alive and you maintain the status quo. Which goes back into why I love reading the Ultimate Universe so much, is because characters will just straight up die, and then that's it. That's it. They're dead. They're not coming back. No, you're absolutely right. In terms of willing to kill off main characters and really drive the story home, absolutely. Even like if you look at what's a good example? I forgot. I think they're called the Trails of series, and like the main character is different every time, even though it's like, kind of like the same storyline because it takes place like
Oh,
the
Games of
sequel of the
Thrones is a
games.
perfect example, but
Sorry.
that's more Western media
Yeah.
now, because now we're now seeing a shift where main characters are actually dying.
Yeah.
Akami got
In
killed. They killed everybody.
I heard about that. I haven't watched it 'cause I know I didn't follow the manga, but I heard like they just wiped characters off the map.
Bro, like you think one person is the star of the show? Dead. He was like, okay, it's gonna be about this person. Dead. Everybody gets it.
Damn. That sounds a lot like Attack on Titan, where they're just like, "Oh, you like that character? Too bad."
Basically,
Yeah,
basically.
I knew I was in for a real one when my two favorite characters were on the verge of death at the same time, Armin and Erwin. I was like, "Y'all are really gonna move like that? You guys are really
By
gonna
the
make?"
end of the series, you're sitting there like, so this was the MC
Yep, that's crazy.
because everybody else dies.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, that it's a good conversation point. Yeah, as you said, like things have been shifting. Like I said, I really like the fact that like All Might stayed alive as opposed to just being killed off because you serve quote unquote no purpose anymore, right? As a man, you can't physically do things, so therefore you have no value. I do like that kind of narrative kind of shifting. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other closing points. I think we cover a lot of like the interaction when it comes to male relationship. Even just this is another thing I want to talk about. Just the idea of I know it's in the title because you know got to get people to click, but the idea of a bromance, right? Why is it that this is my last thing I'd want to say? Why is the idea of male relationship have to be? Why can't they just be bros? Why do we have to create the term bromance? It implies that like heteronormative relationships between men have to be are so uncommon it's on the verge of romanticism. When I say romanticism, I'm not talking about the sense of the term idealism, but in the sense of it being very sexually intimate and borderline homosexual. Not to say there's anything wrong with homosexuality, but why can't heteronormative men have a level of intimacy with each other without it having to cross over into sexuality, right? Because we also have that same issue when it comes to male female relationships, where it's like, oh, why can't men and women just be friends without it being sexual? Why is also the same case for men, right? We look at the last touching point I'll just say is I remember thinking back with how people were implying that Captain America in the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, was gay because of how much he cared about his best friend Bucky. And I had an issue with that, and I didn't understand why. I'm not homophobic, but it implies that heterosexual men should only go on above and beyond for another human being when it's for some sort of romantic or sexual gratification, i.e., towards a woman. And if it's not doing that, it must be homosexual in nature, which is very problematic. Why can't men just be close? There's no such thing as a sisterance, right? A romance between sisters. It's just they're just sisters. But for bros, it has to be a bromance. For men, it has to be something where maybe they're in the closet, and it's like, or maybe Captain America just loves his best friend like that, and it's as simple as that. That's my closing remark.
Ooh, I
Um,
so yeah.
Go ahead, Jordan. Go ahead, Jordan. Hopefully, go ahead, Jordan.
So I was gonna say is, and I have a theory for this. I think that it's deeply political and historically implicated in the sense that, remember, man had okay. So there's two reasons. So men had to go to war.
Hmm.
So many of their friendship and their relationship was built in war. In that I'm gonna protect you. And there's this military term called "you keep six." You protect me. You
Mm.
watch. You
Watch
watch
my
my
back.
back.
Hmm.
So that kind of developed into the sense of we can carry this relationship into the modern world. I think the criticize where the criticize come from
Criticism.
is, yeah. So I think where that comes from
Hmm.
is the idea that it's a threat to to kind of like women. So think about it like this. Um,
Hmm. This guy's about to cook.
so I'm gonna give you a personal experience. So
Hmm.
in a Congolese culture,
Hmm.
they actually favor male relationship. So if I have a brother, I would
Hmm.
take care of the brother before I take care of my wife. So it's a direct threat to the woman. So if I
Mm,
take care of your kid and you're willing to take care of your brother before me, I have to criticize you now because
Mm.
I'm looking over for my own existence and my child.
Mm.
So why is it that you have to take care of your brother, but despite the fact that you have a wife and a family? So I
Mm.
think that's been historically built in the sense that men have been going to war with each other for so long, and they had to protect each other, and they just so happened to carry that tradition into the modern world.
And if you're talking to your best friend, sorry to just add, if you're talking to your best friend, it means that, or your younger brother in our case, it means that she's not getting as much attention. So
Absolutely,
therefore, it should be
yes.
shamed. Yeah, no,
And despite the
that's my
fact that
quote.
we find way more connection with our male friends than we do with, and I'm gonna say this, with our wife and girlfriend.
Hmm.
So you and I, for example, Ed, we can speak about code yes for hours,
Yep.
and we would always have something to say because we'll speak about code geass, but we'll branch off into politics or branch off into other animes.
Hmm.
But then, for
Societal
example,
issues,
if
whatever
if
it
if
is.
your
Yep.
wife do not share the same interests as you do,
It could be dry.
then it can be dry and it's very limited. But
Hmm.
then your wife will see that and say, "Well, why are you talking about? How is it that you're so happy and you can talk about this thing, but you can't even talk to me? But it's
You know
just
what's
that you
funny?
guys just
You know what's
yeah,
funny? Sorry, I just want to add. Deb didn't understand how actually you and I could talk for hours until she spoke to you.
really."
Yeah, she didn't get it. She's like, wow, you and Jordan just like talk. And I'm like, yeah, like we don't, going back on what we said before, we don't talk every day, but once every few months, you and I will have like a 3 4 hour conversation. It's the same thing with
Easy.
like my best friend. It would be like 4 hour conversation. It won't be every day because that's a lot, right? We have, going back on how men tend to be productive. Need to get shit done far as a long time every day. But every few months, we'll just have like a multi-hour conversation. And she didn't get it until she spoke to me. She said, nah, I get it.
Yeah, because I think I was on the phone with Deb for I don't remember. It
It's
was
like 3
wow.
hours.
It was
It was a good
three.
3 3 3 hours.
You know what she said in the end? She
What?
said, she said, "Oh my gosh, we spoke for 3 hours. How has it been 3 hours?" And I just said, "Well, I don't know. We are just really having a really good conversation."
Yep.
Like he's like, "Oh my god," and I think that was a realization for her as to, okay, I see how Eb has long conversations now.
Hmm.
So, and but yeah, that was my point into the whole bromance situation. I think that there's just a
That's a good
lack
point.
of historical understanding from from the women's side,
Mm.
understanding the male relationship, especially the male friendship.
Mm. Baba
I think
Debo.
when it comes to how male relationships are portrayed, it seems the whole questioning the masculinity or their sexuality is more like a Western theme.
Okay.
Because if
Oh
you
yeah,
look
what
at
happened in Nigeria? Hmm.
like the animes, the friendships that are going on there, I don't really see like, oh, they're gay.
Mm.
Or maybe like I'm not into like the forums like that. Like you're the one who mentioned the whole people saying that thing. Actually, I think you sent me like the thread where that was said, where Captain America was has to be homosexual because of
Mm.
his relationship with
With Bucky, yeah.
with Bucky. But when you look at animes, there are way more relationships where you can even say there's some borderline sus stuff going on over there.
Those artworks do still come out from those things, and once again, it still goes back into that conversation. But no, you're right. It's definitely a lot more overt within Eastern media than Western media.
But you don't hear none of the what's going on over there talk. Like you would hear it like it's
it's
done
not
in the
implied.
West.
It's not. You're right. It's not implied. There's, if anything, there's jokes or there's fantasies about it, but it's not implied. Like no one's asked, like, is Yuji really straight? Like, it's no. Him and Todo are just bros.
Yeah. No matter how sus it gets, because we know animes can get like a little with how they depict stuff, but it seems like that level of intimacy when it comes to friendships, nobody really bats an eye at it.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, because I'm.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Jordan.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I remember I had to write a paper for my university project. And I chose this one no, the question was Alexander the Great gay?
Okay.
Right? And part of
Okay.
the reason is because he was always on these mission with his with his best friends and all of that. And they would often do questionable things that
Mm,
in today's standards we will say it's gay.
mm,
But during that time,
mm-hmm,
if you were to ask them, do you like men
mm-hmm,
or are you gay?
mm-hmm,
They wouldn't have, number one, they would not understand what you mean by gay. And number two, they will say, uh no, I have a wife and I'm happily married with my wife, and I have plenty of concubines. I think I'm pretty satisfied.
mm-hmm.
But I think part of the reason, they probably did that is questionable, right? It's a very debatable topic.
Yeah,
Yeah, it could be probably because they've been away for so long by their wife that they felt a need to do something.
could be.
They had to do something.
Yeah.
So this whole male relationship, I can understand how it could quickly turn in that area like gay or
Mm-hmm.
homosexual. But then again, I think many people fail to understand is how you define homosexuality, in the sense that only you know if you actually truly like men,
Yeah.
right? It really comes down to that.
It's true.
Other people can say, well, you did this, but and at the end of the day, you could do a 180 and be like, well, I'm never going to do that again, and you never do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
men
was
don't
just
have a
quickly
lot
in
of
my
But you'll always be gay in
sexuality.
somebody's eyes.
exactly. You'll always be gay in someone else, despite the fact you could probably just experiment with that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually gay.
Yeah,
It just
men
mean
don't
that
have
a
a.
You could
lot
have
of people
kissed.
have told you, yeah.
You could
Sorry,
have
go on.
kissed one dude in 1990, and you're still gay.
Forever.
And that was the only thing
That's
that you've
true.
ever done that was gay. But in 2024, you're still gay.
Yes. Yeah, no, men don't have as much wiggle room when it comes to their sexuality and sexual expression, right? Especially racialized.
Absolutely. Let a girl do that. Nobody's gonna bat an eye. She's
No.
just having fun.
Yeah, it's just like the whole, like a lot of the things you see in like media with women doing a lot of things. Like when I say media, I'm not talking about social media, I'm talking about comic books, video games, anime, so on and so forth. Men don't have the same wiggle room when it comes to those things, right? And if you do those things, once again, your sexuality is always on the chopping block. It's always up for debate.
All the time you see an anime where like a girl will grab another girl's breast.
Mm-hmm.
That's standard, but you don't
Yep.
see it like where like a dude is grabbing another guy's balls because that's my best friend.
That's facts. They
He's
didn't have to scream
absolutely
each other's
right.
name, and all of a
He's
sudden
absolutely
their
right.
sexuality is questioned, right? You see it all the time. Naruto and Sasuke, Kira and Atherin, Yuji and Megumi, even like and that whole thing with Captain America and Bucky is the same thing that you see with younger Ghetto and younger Ghetto and Gojo, right? Like, so I think it's an outro song during the hidden inventory arc, the first 4 episodes of season 2. And it was like kind of like I think, if I remember correctly, it was a letter for the song's lyrics are a letter from Gojo to Ghetto, And I remember seeing on Twitter people still implying that same thing of, oh, this must be, homosexual nature. And I'm just like, why can't another man write? Why can't one heteronormative man write a letter to another heteronormative man about how much he loves and appreciates their relationship
You know
without
what
it
the thing
being
is?
sexual? Sorry, go on. Go on.
Intimacy between men is like so hard to be visualized without it being seen as gay.
Yeah.
Even not even necessarily visualized, but even like spoken. Because there's a content creator, I can't remember his name, and even me, I find myself like in a situation where it's like I don't want to do that with another man because it's going to be seen as gay.
Mm.
So because like there's a content creator and I can't remember his name right now, but whenever he's done with his with a message or a post, at the end he'll say I love you. And for the longest time, every time I heard it, it sounded cringy to me, like ugh, ugh.
Right.
But I don't know, y'all don't love you like that. But his latest post, I watched the post, and at the end he said I love you, and it didn't nothing. There was no cringe. And I even put on the post, I'm like, I know I have grown as a man because I've no longer feel any type of cringe when he says I love you.
Mm. No, it's true, right? And
Yeah.
we had to take more control of it. This is why I felt it was important to have this conversation because we need to take more narrative control of how we see each other in media, how we express our love and appreciation for one another without it being pigeonholed into
Thought
questioning
it's seen
what our
as
sexuality
homosexuality. I
is.
remember the first time my best friend told me he loved me. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but remember, I don't think it's just the media. I think that just as women are their own worst enemy, so for example, in terms of criticism,
Hmm.
I think men are also their own worst enemy. So for example,
Mm.
I remember growing up, I think what was it? I would say no. I like this guy. He's outgoing. He's very fun. He's very likable. And people would say, "Well, that's so gay." Another man. I never heard it from a
These
woman.
things make me
I
laugh.
would
Yeah,
never hear from
for
a
sure.
woman. The only time I actually really heard it from a woman is if, for example, they felt disrespected, or if you disrespected them, then they would say, "Well, you're gay" or something like that. But I've never really outright heard it from a woman. I would always hear from men. This is
Mhm.
how you're supposed to conduct yourself. And I think part of the reason for that, and I think part of the reason why we don't have a safe space when it comes to expressing ourselves in a very positive way to other men, is because of our ego.
Ego, you said?
Our ego, a
Right.
100% our ego. I mean, look what happened to what's his name, Meek Mills. So what happened to him was very disgusting. It was
Talking
it's
about the
not
Diddy stuff, the Diddy
yeah. So
allegations.
he was probably the guy was probably drugged or whatever, because it's been documented that that's what he's been doing to victims. He's been
Right.
drugging them.
Fair. Fair.
However, look how it's been received.
Mm.
You know
Yep.
what I mean? Instead of
Yep.
supporting him, and
Yep.
you don't even have to agree with that sort of sexual act, but
Hmm.
instead of just supporting the guy in that he's actually a victim, people just went ahead and just
Labeled him.
labeled him, insulted him, and everything.
It's true.
And it has to also do with the idea that if you grew up in a very tough neighborhood, if you grew up in the hood,
Hmm.
there's certain characteristics that you need to have. Number one, you can never be gay. You always have to be tough. You can never show feeling. You always
Gay
have to be
in
strong.
quotation marks, like whatever the hell that means.
Yeah,
Soft. Yep.
you always have to be strong. You can never definitely you can never be strong.
Hmm.
So for them, they view something like having a sexual preference as gay. You liking another man as something that's sexually weak.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that in terms of that area, and that kind of also it kind of trickles down into, even if you're not gay, but you were to do questionable stuff that could potentially be seen as gay,
Hmm.
for them,
Which is
especially
very
guys who's
subjective.
been raised in a very tough neighborhood,
Hmm.
they'll see that as a form of weakness.
Mhm.
because that's not something that you do. Even though I would argue the opposite. I think that the fact that you're even willing to express your appreciation for your fellow brotherhood, I
Mhm.
think that's a strength, because that's exactly what we've always done.
Mhm.
You know, if that's, you know, if that's your sexual preference to go after men, that's, you know, that's on you. Of course, that's your own
Mhm.
prerogative. But if you just want to express appreciation, I don't think that you should. I think that you should do that, but it shouldn't be at the expense where people try to bring you down because they think that um you're probably gay or something like that. So I think that we're just our own worst enemy
No, it's true. It's true. We have to
because of our
expand the
ego.
range in which we see, and just kind of lastly touching on the Meek Mill thing, that goes back into just the range of spectrum of how we see our humanity, to see each other as victims, right? We don't really do that. It's just a lot easier to label, which, like I said, we've spoken about at length already. If you guys want to go listen to an older episode, the one about Amber Heard and My Hero, sorry, Rising of a Shield Hero, and my own experience, right? We just struggle to see men as victims. We struggle to see men as people, right? In whatever category it is. It's very myopic, it's very narrow, it's very specific. And if you deviate from that, either it's not seen and is unacknowledged, or you're a problem. That's it from me. I don't know if you guys, Baba Debo, I don't know, or Jordan, I don't know if you guys want to add any last pieces. It's been a great talk. Good comeback. Jordan's probably
Um,
drinking water right now.
in the interest of not
Oh, Jordan logged
bringing
out.
up
Sorry.
any other topics that might push this conversation past the 2.5 hour mark that it already has hit.
No, I think this would be a good place to end it. I
That's what
know
I'm
we have
saying.
another. Yeah, and we
That's what
have
I'm saying.
another.
I'm
We
not
have
gonna
some.
bring up any topics that could
This guy has
add
experience
more
in
time to
content
it.
creation. I see you. I see you, Badebo. I see you, bro.
Yeah, this is a good place to
Stand it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, Jordan is back. I'll bring him back in. Your phone died.
Yep. It was actually at like 60-70%, so I'm surprised it died.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so we were just saying how like this is a good point to end it. We have some upcoming episodes on Jujutsu Kaisen. Um, another one still with regards to Ghetto. No, Gojo, Nanami, and Toji. So we have that, and we still have some other stuff when it comes to Frieren. We were talking about Dan to Dan. Okay, that's really trending right now. So you guys have some stuff to look forward to us. We're really back this time. God willing, we're really back this time. There's three of us now, so some great conversations. I thought this was a fantastic conversation today. Um, I'm out. Thank you guys for tuning in, and look forward to what we have coming up now.
Let's
Peace.
go.
deuces.
Looking forward to the next one with you two.
Yes, sir.
Ciao.
Likewise, likewise.